Chapter 12:26. Two half-step saints were nothing to Bufang, but Bufang was too lazy to do it himself. He decided to try the tool spirit possession. The effect was pretty good. It was easy for him to deal with two half-step saints. However, it was normal. If it was so difficult for him to deal with two half-step saints, what was the point of Bufang having the tool spirit possession? After all, Bufang's cultivation base had reached the half-step saint level. Bufang wasn't very interested in stripping people's clothes. In fact, it would be more charming if Xiaobai did it. Outside the restaurant, Fatty Ding and his guard got up with a dumbfounded look on their faces. They felt a chill on their bodies. Their faces had turned the color of pig liver. The others outside the restaurant were already used to it. It was normal for people to be stripped in the Great Demon's restaurant. Of course, for the people in the restaurant, everything that had happened in the blink of an eye just now had a huge impact. That fresh, refined, and unpretentious laughter, that head of bright blonde hair, and that smile on Owner Boo's face, what a damned smile. Owner Boo could actually smile. What was going on? When did Owner Boo learn to make so many expressions? Cece's mouth fell open, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Was this still the serious, cold, and handsome teacher Bushi knew? It completely subverted her worldview. Not only Cece, but Hua Yu, and even Lord Go were also horrified. Lord Go was so shocked that he almost continued to lick the broth. "You didn't see me." Bufang looked at the shocked people and suddenly rubbed his brows, feeling a headache coming on. Was his image completely subverted in people's hearts? Yu and the others nodded. When they saw Bufang, who was as expressionless as ever, they heaved a sigh of relief. This was the Owner Boo they knew. The broth was finished. Yu's complexion also became rosy. Hua finished the soup and ran to Lord Go's side. She hugged Lord Go's thigh and rubbed her face against it contentedly. Hua always enjoyed the scent of Lord Go. As for Yu, with a red face, she went back to her room to rest. Cece held the bowl and excitedly went into the kitchen to practice cooking. After Bufang had tidied up everything, he pulled a chair and leisurely sat in front of the restaurant's entrance. The warm sunlight shone on his body gently, making him feel comfortable and satisfied. Time passed quickly. When the sun went down, Bufang returned to the restaurant and closed the door. The kitchen was still brightly lit. Cece was still practicing her cooking skills. Her cooking skills had improved very quickly. The provocation she had suffered in the immortal kitchen pavilion had greatly stimulated the little girl, causing her to constantly practice diligently. It was as if she wanted to prove something to everyone. Perhaps she didn't want to ruin her reputation as Bufang's apprentice. After all, Teacher Boo was so awesome. Practicing cooking is a step-by-step process. You need to know how to strike a balance between work and rest. Bufang stepped into the kitchen and saw the little girl waving the kitchen knife to practice her knife skills. He couldn't help but frown. He rubbed Cece's head and asked her to bring a chair to sit on. Bufang made a vermilion fruit-flavored ice cream and gave it to Cece, asking her to take a break. Cece looked at the food curiously. After taking a bite, she was completely attracted. Although Cece was precocious, she was still a little girl. She had no resistance to ice cream, and she was completely captivated by its delicious taste. Taking advantage of this time, Bufang rolled up his sleeves, preparing to cook a dish. This dish it was called sword pot. It was the cooking method that the system rewarded him with. It was rare for the system to reward him with a cooking method. That was why this dish was hard to come by. Bufang was a little serious. He was reading about the cooking method of the sword pot in his mind. The recipe given by the system was very detailed about the cooking method of this dish. Sword pot. The ingredient is the earth prison sword feather crane. The earth prison sword feather crane is a special spirit beast from the cave of the fallen gods in earth prison. It has its own sword intent, which is incomparably sharp and lethal. It lives in flocks, and wherever it goes, it leaves a trail of sword marks. Among them, The king of the earth prison sword feather crane has comprehended the complete sword intent. Its body can transform into a sword. The system's serious voice rang in Bufang's mind. It explained the cooking method and origin of sword pot to Bufang. Standing in front of the stove, Bufang was lost in thought. In the distance, Cici was happily eating her ice cream while looking curiously at Bufang. What delicious dish is Teacher Bu going to cook this time? Bufang didn't stay in thought for long. Soon, Bufang opened his eyes and came to the cupboard. As soon as he opened it, a terrible sword intent shot out of it. The sword intent was extremely sharp. It seemed to have turned into many invisible little swords, stabbing toward Bufang. However, when it came to this kind of bird-type spirit beast, of course, Bufang had his own way of suppressing it. In his spirit sea, the vermilion bird's pressure merged with his body and spread out. The vermilion robe on his body turned crimson, and there was a glazed brilliance flashing on it. Boom! A loud and clear bird cry resounded through the air. The violent sword intent that shot out from the cupboard instantly stopped. Bufang reached out his hand, grabbing a sword feather crane from the cupboard. It was a snow-white crane. Its feathers were milky white, without a speck of dust. However, the most distinctive feature was its temperament. It was like a long sword that hadn't been unsheathed. Each feather on its body seemed to contain sword intent like an arrow. If the sword intent swept out, it could cut everything. Sword pot was different from any dish that Bufang had cooked before. Thus, Bufang needed to spend more time to study it. It was precisely because he had pondered enough that Bufang chose to start cooking. He took out the black turtle constellation wok and heated it up. The boiling spring of life in the wok stirred. He put the sword feather crane into the wok. After processing it, he drained its blood and plucked its feathers. All the steps were done in an orderly manner. The sword feather crane's feathers were like sharp swords. The plucked feathers were thrown on the ground. Each of them was very heavy, like a dagger, clanking softly. It was full of characteristics. Bufang continued in an orderly manner. The difficulty of cooking this sword pot wasn't high. It was even lower than the bone soup. With the dragon bone kitchen knife, the entire sword feather crane was cut into small pieces. After pouring hot oil over it, he put it into the wok and stir-fried it. Then, he added a large amount of sun mother ginger and stir-fried it. After stir-frying it, he took out an earth-colored clay pot that the system had prepared. After pouring the cooked dishes into the clay pot, Bufang covered it with a lid. He had to simmer it over low heat until it was thick. It was a very time-consuming process. However, at this moment, Bufang was very calm. He wasn't in a hurry. He sat cross-legged on the ground, waiting for the pot to be ready. Cici finished her ice cream and didn't disturb Bufang. Instead, she quietly observed Owner Bu's cooking. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Bufang, who was controlling the fire, pondered. What was the meaning of the system giving him a dish like the sword pot? However, Bufang changed his mind. Perhaps the system wanted Bufang to use the sword pot to fuse with the gourmet array. Perhaps the dish provided by the system could fuse with the gourmet array more easily. Gurgle. In the clay pot, there was hot steam rising and boiling continuously. The aroma lingered, enticing one's appetite. White smoke billowed from the clay pot. The smoke turned into sharp long swords above the clay pot, as though they were about to tear the void apart. Even Bufang was a little shocked by the sword intent rising from the clay pot. This sword intent seemed a little frightening. At least, Bufang was a little frightened. The sword pot could be said to be finished just like that. There wasn't any technique to make it tender. Everything looked so easy. He picked up the clay pot. Cici also finished her ice cream. Curiously, she raised her head, looking at Bufang. Cici was also very interested in the dish cooked by Bufang. Because the dish this time seemed a little strange. It was completely different from the previous dishes. Bufang opened his eyes. Inside the basin-sized clay pot, there was the sword pot. Bufang clasped his hands, standing in front of the sword pot as he pondered. He didn't taste it first. Instead, he stared at it carefully. After watching for a long time, Bufang suddenly understood. He always felt that something was missing. Now, it seemed that the ingredients lacked the will of the great path. Thus, this sword pot wasn't finished yet. Holding the sword pot, Bufang said to Cece. Then, he disappeared, entering the heaven and earth farmland. Finding Nyo Han-san, he placed the sword pot on the table. Looking at the big clay pot, Nyo Han-san's eyes brightened. Owner Bu, you're too polite. Who do you think you are? You actually brought the dish here for this old cow to taste? How can I accept this? Nyo Han-san grinned. While talking, he reached out his hand, lifting the lid of the clay pot. Buzz, as soon as the lid was lifted, instantly, surging hot air rose, shooting up into the sky. The hot air rolled, as if there was a sharp blade bursting out from the clay pot, making Nyo Han-san's heart jump. Gulp. Nyo Han-san's movements froze. After a long time, he looked at Bufang. How could there be sword will in a dish? Moreover, looking at the sword intent, it seemed to want to tear everything. Nyo Han-san took a deep breath. This thing, can it be eaten? Nyo Han-san's mouth trembled. He knew that Owner Bu wouldn't be so kind as to bring him food. Have a taste. See what's missing as a carrier of the death food tool. Bufang clasped his hands, his face expressionless as he said to Nyo Han-san. Nyo Han-san nodded. Then, he reached out his chopsticks. Swish. In the clay pot, pieces of crane meat were shaking. The skin was soft, brownish red, and there were thick slices of ginger inside. The ginger flavor of the Sun Mother ginger mixed with the sword intent of the sword feather crane, which somehow complemented each other. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could tear the sky. Bufang reached his chopsticks into the clay pot. After a while, he picked up a piece of meat. Nyo Han-san opened his mouth, looking at Bufang. On this piece of meat, there seemed to be sword energy moving. That sword energy was so sharp that it seemed like it could cut the void. This thing. He had to eat it. Nyo Han-san wondered if his mouth would be torn into pieces. Owner Bu, is it really okay? Nyo Han-san was still a little skeptical, looking at Bufang. Bufang furrowed his brows. Why was this Nyo Han-san so hesitant, like a girl? The corners of his mouth twitched. Bufang grabbed his chopsticks, pushing the ginger slices away from the clay pot. Then, he picked up a piece of brownish-red crane meat. He put the crane meat into his mouth. Bufang's teeth slowly bit down. Swish. The meat bit down. The sound of sword energy cutting through the air resounded. A sword intent shot out from Bufang's mouth. That sword intent stabbed into the ground, and actually pierced a small hole in the ground. Nyo Han-san swallowed his saliva, glaring. Owner Bu, was he trying to kill a cow? If he ate it, if the sword intent burst out, wouldn't he be pierced into a sieve? You try. Bufang put down his chopsticks, chewing the crane meat. A thick meat aroma came from his mouth. Nyo Han-san was still a little hesitant. However, thinking that Bufang had eaten it then, he should have a taste, so, he picked up a small piece of crane meat, stuffing it into his mouth. As soon as it entered his mouth, the expression in Nyo Han-san's eyes suddenly changed. Chapter 12:27. To his surprise, the crane meat tasted so good in his mouth. The soft and tender texture exploded in his mouth in an instant. The crane meat was full of elasticity, and when he bit it, his teeth felt as if they were going to bounce off. The feeling in his mouth made Nyo Han-san's eyes go wide. Sizzle. Just like Bufang, he shot out a jet of sword energy from his mouth. The sword energy shot out and hit the ground, piercing a small hole. There was also hot air lingering in the small holes. Its power wasn't weak at all. Nyo Han-san forgot to chew. This thing didn't have a gourmet array, but its power wasn't weaker than the bursting meatball. If it had a gourmet array, the jet of sword energy it shot out, would it be able to reach the sky? Nyo Han-san smacked his lips, as if he hadn't had enough. He reached out his chopsticks again, picked up another piece of crane meat, and put it in his mouth. Then, he bit it. Sizzle! Another sharp sword cheese shot out and smashed into the ground, piercing a hole in the ground. Smoke filled the air. Not bad, not bad. Delicious. Nyohan-san looked at the small hole and seemed to enjoy eating. He picked up another piece of meat, and with another sizzle, he shot out another jet of sword energy. This feeling seemed to be very good. Bufang looked at Nyohan-san, the corners of his mouth twitching. Do you feel anything different? Bufang asked. It lacks some will of the great path. Otherwise, it would be a very good carrier for death food tools, even better than the perishing pot. Nyohan-san said honestly. Bufang nodded seriously, thinking that what he said made sense. So, I'll leave the task of making ingredients contain the will of the great path to you. I think you're very familiar with this. Bufang looked at Nyohan-san and said sincerely. Then, his mind flickered. A sword feather crane appeared in his hand. The system had prepared a total of 3 sword feather cranes for him. He had killed one, so there were 2 left. These 2 were perfect for Nyohan-san to add the will of the heavenly Tao. Nyohan-san stuffed a piece of crane meat into his mouth, blinking his eyes. He glanced at the sword feather crane in Bufang's hand and took a deep breath. The sharpness of the sword feather crane's sword aura gave him a fright. What a terrifying sword aura! Is this the ingredient in the claypot? Sure enough, every chef was a natural artist, possessing the power of uncanny craftsmanship. For the sword feather crane to be made like this, it was also a form of skill. Then I'll try my best. Nyohan-san took the sword feather crane from Bufang, then turned and walked toward the back of the cabin. After a while, he trotted back. He moved closer to the clay pot and continued to eat the crane meat. A piece of crane meat entered his mouth. Instantly, a jet of sword energy shot out from his mouth, drilling into the ground. Nyohan-san was elated. He found that, if he could make this thing well, it would be a death food tool that was even more awesome than the bursting pissing meatball. Think about it when you're fighting. He held a clay pot in his hand. Picking up a piece of crane meat, he bit it. Instantly, the meat shot out a jet of sword energy. The jet of sword energy pierced through the enemy, the feeling of strolling leisurely in the courtyard, the feeling of killing the enemy with a single bite, just thinking about it made him excited. Bufang looked at Nyohan-san, who was eating happily, but he didn't say anything. He left the sword pot there, letting him eat, then left the heaven and earth farmland. Something like a death food tool couldn't be rushed. He had to study it slowly. Of course, if he could make it into a death food tool, Bufang would be busy again. He returned to the kitchen. Cece was still sitting on the chair, licking the bowl of ice cream until the whole bowl was clean. Teacher Boo, what delicacy is this? It's so delicious. Cece said happily. It's called ice cream. It's cooked by another apprentice of mine. Bufang said, rubbing Cece's head. However, he was quickly stunned as he fell into deep thought. Now that the restaurant had many branches, it wasn't a good thing to let so many branches spread out without any communication. Bufang wondered if the system had a way to let his apprentices gather together and exchange cooking skills. Perhaps their cooking skills could be improved. System, what do you think? Bufang asked the system. He felt that it was necessary to implement this idea. Facing Bufang's question, the system fell into silence, as though it was thinking. Bufang wasn't in a hurry. He hoped that he could gather all the apprentice chefs from different restaurants to exchange knowledge and improve together. Teacher Boo's other apprentice? Cece's eyes suddenly lit up, and the curiosity in her heart suddenly burst. She had heard from Nethery that Bufang had many restaurants, and each of them had apprentice chefs. Now that she found out that Bufang wanted to talk to her, she was excited. Although she was addicted to cooking, she was still a child after all. She would always feel tired if she practiced cooking alone. So, sometimes she wanted someone to communicate with. Host, please pay attention, the system's serious voice rang out. Bufang's eyes narrowed. About the host's suggestion to gather the apprentice chefs from different restaurants, the system has analyzed and found it feasible. To implement it, a plane carrier is needed, the system said. Bufang furrowed his brows. He knew what the system meant. A plane carrier was needed, which meant a place for the apprentice chefs to communicate. And this place couldn't be the Heaven Chief Realm, nor could it be the Light Wind Empire. Because the level of the plane was different, the system couldn't let the apprentice chefs cross over. Bufang furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. The system suggests that the host can use the Heaven and Earth farmland as a plane carrier so that all the apprentice chefs can gather and communicate in the farmland. The system's voice rang out. Bufang's eyes lit up as if he had just been enlightened. Heaven and Earth farmland. That's right, this is a good idea. Just like how Jing Yuan could go to the Heaven and Earth farmland to get milk. This idea is feasible. In the Heaven and Earth farmland, there is no need to worry about the plane carrier, and the level of the plane will not affect the apprentice chef. Bufang nodded and said, "Yes, it's feasible. According to the host's suggestion, we will now begin to build the restaurant's portal." The system's serious voice continued to ring out. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. His eyes moved and met Cece's curious eyes. Rubbing Cece's head, Bufang's mouth curled up. "Cece, Teacher Bu will take you to a fun place," Bufang said. Cece was bewildered. A moment later, she cheered. "A fun place? Good, good," Cece said excitedly. Then, Bufang raised his head, reached out his hand, and pointed ahead. "Do you know what's behind that door?" Bufang asked Cece. Cece froze. She followed Bufang's finger, and her small face was filled with disbelief. Why is there a door there?" Cece asked curiously. As someone who had practiced cooking in the restaurant's kitchen for a long time, Cece was very familiar with every little detail in the restaurant. After all, when she was practicing cooking, Cece would wander around the kitchen. However, she was sure that there should be no such door in the restaurant. "Can't we just open the door and see?" "Teacher Bu, the other apprentice chefs are all behind that door," Bufang said. Cece's eyes instantly sparkled with excitement. She dashed to the door. It was a bronze door with no complicated patterns carved on it. There was only a doorknob. "Teacher Bu, come here." Cece grabbed the doorknob. She wanted to open it, but she was a little hesitant. She glanced at Bufang, then hurriedly shouted. She wanted Bufang to come and cheer her up. Bufang walked over. There was a cracking sound. The doorknob was twisted. With a squeak, the door was opened. A gust of wind blew over. Bufang pulled Cece's small hand, stepping through the door. This was the transportation door built by the system, which was responsible for transporting people from Bufang's restaurants to the Heaven and Earth farmland. Rustle, everything in front of his eyes became clear. Cece held Bufang's hand, hiding behind him in fear. However, when she saw the beautiful scenery of the Heaven and Earth farmland behind the door, she dropped her jaw, her eyes sparkling. "So beautiful!" Cece couldn't help but exclaim. The wind blew on the grass, and the chicks could be seen. 80 was running happily in the grass. Suddenly, its body stiffened, and it turned its head to look. It saw Bufang. With one look, little 8 was instantly filled with fear. It remembered how scary this chef looked when he turned into a red-haired man. 80 shivered. Without saying a word, it turned and ran. Then, it disappeared into the bushes. When the 8 treasures pig saw Bufang, it did the same thing, rolling and crawling away. "Teacher Bu, chicks and piglets seem to be afraid of you," Cece said curiously. "Maybe it's because I'm handsome," Bufang answered with an expressionless face. He glanced at 80 and 8 treasures pig, twitching his mouth. Creak. The sound of the door opening resounded. Cece's attention was instantly attracted, and she looked around. The wind in the Heaven and Earth farmland suddenly became stronger. The fragrance of grass filled the air. The first door opened. A graceful figure walked out. She was carrying a wooden bucket and she seemed to be used to it. However, when she opened the door, she saw Bufang and Bufang holding Cece's hand. Jing Yuan was a little surprised. Head chef Bu? Bufang just nodded at Jing Yuan. Cece, this is Teacher Bu's other apprentice, Bufang said to Cece. Cece looked at Jing Yuan with a little fear. Then, she pulled Bufang's arm and nodded at Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan froze. Then, a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Creak, creak, creak around them, more doors opened. Jing Yuan and Cece curiously looked over. There, 3 doors opened. Looking at the 3 gates, Bufang's heart surged with emotions. Because he knew that those 3 doors represented his 3 restaurants. Fang Fang's Little Store Cloud Mist Restaurant Taotia Restaurant 3 shops in the Hidden Dragon Continent. How come there's another door in the restaurant? The workmanship of this door is really rubbish. It's not as good as the door in my house. A gentle voice rang out. Then, a figure opened the door and a head popped out. It was a beautiful face, with a fair complexion and snow-white skin. Her hair was tied up with a velvet rope, just like Bufang. If this person didn't have an Adam's apple, she would have spoken with a man's voice. Cece and Jing Yuan almost thought that it was a woman. Xiao Xiaolong walked out of the door. A gust of wind blew over, causing him to close his eyes in a daze. It had been a long time since they last met. Xiao Xiaolong had grown a lot taller, and he had become more beautiful, more feminine. From a little boy, he had grown into a pretty boy. The F***CK? Opening his misty eyes, Xiao Xiaolong saw Bufang, who was holding Cece's hand in the distance. That gaze seemed to see through 1,000 years. Bu? Owner Bu? The F***CK? Am I hallucinating? Didn't you go to the Heaven Chief realm? And who is this girl? How long has it been, and you already have a daughter? The F***CK. Really? I admire you. Xiao Xiaolong was amazed. He hadn't seen Bufang for a long time. He didn't expect that Bufang would give him such a big gift. He thought of something. Xiao Xiaolong hurriedly turned around, shouting toward the door, "Sister Yu Fu! Come quickly! Owner Bu has brought the girl back to see us." The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on his forehead. He wished he could slap this guy to death. Chapter 12:28. Xiao Xiaolong's exclamation made Bufang speechless. This fellow really liked to watch a good show. Behind the door, Yu Fu swayed her serpentine tail as she walked out. Her pretty face was filled with curiosity. Yu Fu was now the empress of the Serpentmen city. Her status was high, and her cultivation base was formidable. She was one of the top experts in the entire illusory spirit swamp. Moreover, because the Black Dragon King of the Endless Sea realm had gone to the Heaven Chief realm with Bufang, the oceanic species' attitude toward the illusory spirit swamp had improved a lot. That was why the illusory spirit swamp hadn't been invaded by the oceanic species for a long time. That was why Yu Fu had the leisure to leave the illusory spirit swamp's Serpentmen city and come to Fang Fang's little store in the Light Wind Imperial City to help Xiao Xiaolong manage the business and study cooking. It's really Owner Bu. Yu Fu's red lips parted slightly, revealing a look of disbelief. She had thought that ever since Owner Bu had entered the Heaven Chief realm, she would never have the chance to see him again. She had never thought that she would be able to see Owner Bu's face so soon. Was there something wrong with her eyes? Yu Fu rubbed her eyes. After confirming that she wasn't seeing things, her face flushed with excitement. In front of Bufang, the dignified empress of the Serpentmen tribe was still the little serpent woman from before. Besides Bufang, Xiao Xiaolong's gaze also landed on the others. Whether it was Jing Yuan, Cece, or Nyo Han-san, who was eating a spirit fruit in the distance, he saw them all. Where was this place? He had such a question in his mind. Squeak! Another door was opened. Behind the door, a burly figure slowly walked out. Behind the burly figure was a seductive figure. These two people were the apprentices of the Cloud Mist restaurant, Yang Meiji and Sorceress and Xing. As soon as Yang Meiji appeared, her aura suppressed everyone else. Moreover, there was also the extremely gentle and charming Sorceress and Xing. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Yang Meiji and Sorceress and Xing were stunned when they saw Bufang. The last door was also opened. A carefree and unrestrained figure walked out. He was wearing a chef robe, and his chest was open, revealing his fair skin. Wenren Shang staggered out with a jar of wine in his hand. His body reeked of alcohol. What is this place? Why haven't I seen it before? Wenren Shang looked around in bewilderment. Finally, he fixed his eyes on Bufang. Owner Bu. Wenren Shang grinned. I'm getting old. I drank a few too many mouthfuls of wine, and now I'm hallucinating, Wenren Shang said with a smile. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. His apprentices all seemed to have their own personalities. Cici was already watching with great curiosity. Her big eyes were filled with surprise. He didn't expect Teacher Bu to have so many apprentices. All right. Wake up, everyone. Let me introduce you, Bufang said casually. Her cold voice resounded in everyone's ears. This was the first time Bufang's apprentices met. Bufang asked them to introduce themselves, such as where they came from. After the introductions, the atmosphere was much more harmonious. Then, Bufang introduced the heaven and earth farmland to everyone and told them that it would be the place where they would gather in the future to discuss cooking. A place to improve together. The others were stunned. They didn't expect this to happen. In the past, they had to bury themselves in the kitchen to practice cooking, which was boring and inefficient. Now they could discuss cooking together. This was the best thing Owner Bu had ever done. Cici was the youngest among the apprentices. Bufang asked them to talk for a while. Then, he pulled Nyo Han-san into the wooden house. Nyo Han-san was very curious about Bufang's behavior. He couldn't believe that Bufang had so many apprentice chefs under him. How's the fusion of the will of the Great Path? Bufang asked. How can it be so fast? Give this old bull some time. Take it slow. Don't rush. Nyo Han-san looked at Bufang, smiling. The bull's eyes rolled, winking. Bufang was also carefree. He was too impatient. Nyo Han-san was right. A hasty man would never get to eat hot tofu. Thus, Bufang wasn't too impatient. After talking to Nyo Han-san, he left the wooden house. As for these apprentices, Bufang took out bursting pissing meatballs one after another. As for his apprentices, how could they not be able to protect themselves? Bursting meatballs were just right for them. In the Hidden Dragon continent, bursting meatballs were simply earth-shattering weapons. With bursting meatballs, they didn't need to worry about enemies. Even the strongest divine spirit realm expert in the Hidden Dragon continent would explode instantly when facing bursting meatballs. Of course, the effect on Jing Yuan wasn't so obvious. However, Bufang still gave them to her. As for Cici, Bufang paid special attention to her, giving her a few more. After all, she was still young, and there were so many bad uncles around. If she met Fatty Ding again, Cici could throw an bursting meatball at his fat face. After distributing the bursting meatballs, Bufang asked the apprentices to talk among themselves. Bufang left the heaven and earth farmland. Nowadays, the apprentices could use the transportation door built by the system to travel between the heaven and earth farmland. It was an independent passage that belonged to them. As the master of the heaven and earth farmland, Bufang didn't need the transportation door. However, he could leave first. When the apprentices finished talking, they would return. Time was ticking away slowly. It had been half a year since Mengqi returned to the Heaven Chief realm. Because of the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the whole Heaven Chief realm had undergone earth-shaking changes. The immortal energy was much stronger, and geniuses were constantly born in the Heaven Chief realm. Every day, The Heaven Chief Hall was very lively because geniuses came to take the examination, constantly breaking the previous records of the Heaven Chief realm. The golden age of the Heaven Chief realm had come. Moreover, the relationship between the Heaven Chief realm and the Nether prison had eased a lot. Nether prison merchants came and went from the Heaven Chief realm, bringing a lot of good things from the Nether prison. Many of the Nether prison's specialties sold very well in the Heaven Chief realm. Meanwhile, the goods from the Heaven Chief realm would be brought back to the Nether prison by the Nether prison merchant. Of course, there were also caravans from the Heaven Chief realm that went to the Nether prison. This kind of exchange allowed the Heaven Chief realm and the Nether prison to understand each other. It was no longer as tense as before. Realm Lord Dit hadn't returned yet. He had gone to the abyss for so long, but he still hadn't returned. This was a torture for the many city lords of the Heaven Chief realm. If it weren't for the fact that nothing unusual had happened in the Heaven Chief realm, Mengqi and the others might have already gone to the abyss. As the Realm Lord of the Heaven Chief realm, Realm Lord Dit was the one who communicated with the Heaven Chief realm. Once he fell, the whole Heaven Chief realm would change. At that time, all kinds of strange phenomena would appear, and the whole Heaven Chief realm would mourn with the world. This was the status of the Realm Lord in the Heaven Chief realm. The Heaven Tree grew more and more luxuriant. The resurrected Heaven Tree was slowly returning to its peak state. The fruits of the Heaven Tree were growing. Now, the fruits of the Heaven Tree were constantly producing good things. The overall strength of the Heaven Chief realm was constantly rising. On this day, outside the Heaven Chief realm, a huge abyssal winged dragon flapped its wings, slowly flying back. Its 2 pairs of wings flapped, stirring up a gust of wind that seemed to be able to blow everything away. The abyssal winged dragon's eyes were huge, but its intelligence wasn't high. However, it could still be considered a top beast king. When it appeared on the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm, it attracted the attention of many experts in the Immortal City. The entire Immortal City entered a state of alert, thinking that an enemy attack was about to happen. However, when everyone's nerves were stretched taut, on the back of the abyssal winged dragon, a figure stood up, waving excitedly at them. A moment later, that figure stepped on the abyssal winged dragon's shoulder. Then, he turned into a jet of light, shooting toward the city wall like a cannonball. With a boom, he landed on the wall. The guards were shocked, waving their weapons. However, when the dust settled, a face that everyone was very familiar with was revealed. Realm Lord, Your Highness? It's really the Realm Lord. Realm Lord, Your Highness is back. When the guards saw that person's face, every one of them revealed a look of excitement. Their eyes shone brightly as they looked at the blonde Realm Lord Dit. Dit's face was complicated as he looked at the excited guards on the wall. He had returned from the Divine Chef's remains. His face was unshaven, and he looked much older than before. However, his aura and cultivation base had grown tremendously, and he gave off a completely different feeling. Surrounded by the crowd, Realm Lord Dit had returned to the Heaven Chief Hall. The news of his return spread throughout the entire Heaven Chief realm. The city lords began to move. When Yaya saw the Realm Lord return, her beautiful face burst into tears of joy. She ran over and hugged Dit's body, which seemed to have grown much thicker. In the past, the Realm Lord Dit was handsome, but now, he looked much older. It was as if he had turned from a little fresh meat to an uncle. However, this change made Yaya even happier. It was a good thing for the Heaven Chief realm that the Realm Lord had become more mature. Mengqi, the Zhou Lords, Gongshu Baiguang, and the others all looked at Realm Lord Dit excitedly. Thank you for your hard work. Realm Lord Dit took a deep breath as he looked at the familiar faces. Your Highness, did you get the Divine Chef's inheritance? Mengqi asked curiously. He had disappeared for almost half a year. Although Bufang kept telling her that the Realm Lord Dit was safe, she was still worried. Now that the Realm Lord had returned, she couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief. The others were also curious about Mengqi's question. Realm Lord Dit had a beard around his mouth, which made him look a little sloppy, but it also made him look more experienced. The Divine Chef's inheritance is an opportunity. The Divine Chef I met this time is the top Divine Chef in the Abyss. His inheritance is really complicated. I fought for it with a genius from the Nether Prison's Shadow Demon clan, and in the end we got half of it, and each of us got half of it, Realm Lord Dit said. However, I'm more and more confident about becoming a Divine Chef. As long as I have enough time, I will definitely be able to break through to the Divine Chef realm, Realm Lord Dit said. As soon as he said that, the whole place was quiet for a long time. The next moment, it was completely boiling. The Divine Chef realm. This meant that a real Divine Chef was about to appear in their Heaven Chief realm. After a long chat, Realm Lord Dit said that he was going to the Heaven Chief restaurant. 4 city lords and 1 realm lord walked out of the transportation array and headed toward the Heaven Chief restaurant in the Heaven Chief realm's first layer. From a distance they saw a long line. On one side of the line, at the entrance of the restaurant, a figure was curled up in a chair, taking a nap with his eyes closed. The warm sunlight sprinkled down and shone on his body. Next to the young man was a black dog, and next to the black dog sat a slender and elegant young lady. She was wearing a long black dress, and her gray-green hair fluttered in the wind. She was also sitting in a chair, swinging her fair legs. The sound of footsteps disturbed Bufang's rest. He slowly opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Then, he saw 5 familiar figures. Oh! When he saw the leader, Bufang froze. "You're back." Bufang looked at Realm Lord Dit, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. Realm Lord Dit gave Bufang a deep look. His eyes filled with a complicated look. His performance on the Stairway of Culinary Arts had made him understand how terrifying Bufang was. He had passed the Stairway of Culinary Arts, and past the Culinary Path Life and Death Juncture. All of Bufang's performances showed that if he wanted the Divine Chef's inheritance, it would be a piece of cake for him. However, in the end, Bufang didn't choose it. Instead, he gave the opportunity to him. He had to thank him for this kindness. Therefore, when Realm Lord Dit saw Bufang, he nodded seriously at Bufang. From the look in Realm Lord Dit's eyes, Bufang seemed to understand what he meant. However, he didn't care. He, Bufang, had his own path, and the Divine Chef was far from his destination. By the way, Realm Lord Dit looked at Bufang with a serious look in his eyes. The City Lord and the Great Judge of Abyss City seemed to have their eyes on you. You should be careful. They are now independent of Nether Prison and have negotiated with Nether Prison. They are now preparing for the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, so they don't have time to deal with you for the time being. But when they are free, they will definitely come to you again, Realm Lord Dit said. Bufang was slightly taken aback. But soon, it didn't matter. He simply nodded indifferently. He had to deal with the situation as it came. He hadn't even gone to the Abyss for trouble yet, and the Abyss was already looking for trouble with him. Also, I want to discuss something with you about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, Realm Lord Dit said in a deep voice. Bufang frowned and gave Realm Lord Dit a deep look. What's wrong with the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? What's there to discuss? I'm just the owner of a restaurant. I'm not interested in the affairs of these realms, Bufang said expressionlessly. However, Realm Lord Dit shook his head. No. You will be interested. Chapter 12:29. The Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path. Bufang was a little stunned when he heard the name. The current Bufang was no longer a fledgling that had just left the thatched cottage. The Netherworld was a behemoth that included the Ruin Prison, Earth Prison, and Nether Prison. Whether it was the Hidden Dragon Continent where Bufang had stayed before or the Heaven Chief Realm where he stayed now, they were both tiny compared to the whole Netherworld. The Tournament of the Great Path that Realm Lord Dit mentioned was held by the Netherworld, so its significance was very different. The ruin prison was too weak to be discussed for the time being. Even Earth Prison and Nether Prison were not close enough to hold the tournament of the Great Path together. Back then, Earth Prison's old Hades had joined forces with Earth Prison's army to attack Nether Prison. As a result, there was a fierce battle and countless casualties. They should be considered mortal enemies, so how could they sit down and hold the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path together? The three Netherworlds are a whole and inseparable, Realm Lord Dit said with a wry smile when he saw the doubt in Bufang's eyes. He knew that Bufang would reject the topic as soon as he brought it up. Before this, our Heaven Chief Realm was not qualified to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path because Heaven Chief Realm was too weak, so we were always excluded. Realm Lord Dit said. Behind him, the other city lords were also listening curiously. However, the whole Netherworld has been in turmoil recently. The Abyss, Earth Prison, and our Heaven Chief Realm are all forcing Nether Prison, causing it to gradually fall into a passive position. So, the Nether Prison's Tournament of the Great Path has expanded into the Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path. The main reason for all this was that Nether Prison could not withstand the pressure from the outside world. It was not only the pressure from Earth Prison, the Abyss, and the Heaven Chief Realm. As the top of the Netherworld, Nether Prison naturally had to bear a lot of pressure from other places. There were forbidden lands in Nether Prison, and the powers in them were not under its jurisdiction. Whether it was Earth Prison or Nether Prison, the existence of the forbidden lands was like a bone stuck in the throat. It was very difficult and also very scary. Moreover, the Netherworld couldn't be the only land in the vast starry sky. Many people did not know this secret. World Overlord Dit only knew of this secret because he was the overlord of a world. In everyone's eyes, Nether Prison was like heaven and earth, encompassing the entire world. But that was not the case. Since it's a competition held by Nether Prison, why don't you just send a few people back? Is there a need for such a serious discussion? Bufang glanced at Realm Lord Dit. Mengqi and the rest also looked at Realm Lord Dit in confusion. Although the relationship between the Heaven Chief Realm and Nether Prison had eased in the past 6 months, it was enough for the Heaven Chief Realm to send some people to participate in the competition held by Nether Prison. Why was there a need for such a serious discussion? No. Of course, it's not just that. This time, Nether Prison has invited the Netherworld, including all the continents and small worlds around it, to compete and rank in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. The higher the ranking, the greater the reward. The reward may even be the irrigation of the Netherworld's will of the Great Path, Realm Lord Dit said. Mengqi and the others sucked in a cold breath. The irrigation of the Netherworld's will of the Great Path? What did that mean? How could such a reward exist? Not even Nether Prison could provide it. There was no doubt that the will of the Great Path had an effect. If it could be irrigated, it could even greatly improve a person's aptitude and make him a saint. The reward was very generous. Bufang's pupils constricted. Just like when the Lord Go bit the will of the Great Path, even at the risk of being seriously injured. This was enough to show the benefits of the will of the Great Path. That was enough to drive everyone crazy. Nether Prison had really come up with a gift that no one could refuse. This news. In fact, it hasn't been announced to the public yet. I learned it from Ingya. He is the Nether Prison genius who fought with me for the inheritance in the God of Cooking's remains. But I'm afraid the other worlds will know about this soon. Realm Lord Dit said. In a few days, Nether Prison should send experts to discuss with us. This is actually a good opportunity for the Heaven Chief Realm. Mengqi and the others fell silent. If it was really like what Realm Lord Ditai had said, even if it was just for the reward, they had to send their experts to participate. Of course, if all the continents and small worlds around them were to participate in that case, the Heaven Chief Realm could not casually send people to participate. Once many small worlds participated, it meant the face of the Heaven Chief Realm, and it was also the time to show how strong the Heaven Chief Realm was. In the face of Nether Prison, the Heaven Chief Realm was still a little weak. But in the face of other planes, the Heaven Chief Realm could not be at a disadvantage. It still needed face. That's it. Realm Lord Dit nodded. He thought that the others should understand what he meant. Naturally, Bufang understood. But he still said the same thing. What did it have to do with him? Bufang was still having a headache recently because he learned from the system that Xiao Bai's repair had been preliminarily completed, but because he lacked the puppet heart of the 3 Revolution Sacred Nether Puppet, he could not be revived. Meanwhile, Bufang was still having a headache about how to get the puppet heart of the 3 Revolution Sacred Nether Puppet. Now that Realm Lord Dit was talking to him about the Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path, how could he be interested? Suddenly Bufang seemed to think of something. His eyes lit up, and he turned to look at Realm Lord Dit. Will the 9 clans of Nether Prison participate in this so-called Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path? Will the Nether Puppeteer clan participate as well? Bufang asked. That gave Realm Lord Dit pause. The Nether Puppeteer clan was ranked 2nd among the 9 clans of Nether Prison. It was a behemoth. Why would Bufang ask such a question? Still, he nodded. Although the specific rules of the tournament haven't come out yet, according to normal circumstances, the Nether Puppeteer clan will definitely participate. Or rather, all 9 clans will participate. The Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path was originally the Nether Prison's Tournament of the Great Path, and it was originally a venue for the 9 clans. Now that it has been expanded to the whole Netherworld, it is actually still a venue for the 9 clans. Except for the geniuses from Earth Prison who may compete with the 9 clans of Nether Prison, the other small worlds and continents are basically just there to show their faces. Realm Lord Dit said, Nether Prison clearly wants to make this Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path a link to unite the whole Netherworld and the many small worlds around it. It is to unite the forces. Unite the forces? Bufang narrowed his eyes. Mengqi and the others were also lost in thought. The purpose of uniting the forces must be to fight against something. But what else did Nether Prison need to fight against? For a moment they were a little puzzled. If the Nether Puppeteer clan of Nether Prison is participating, then I agree to participate, Bufang said after thinking for a moment. At least in this way, it would be much easier to find the puppet's heart. Realm Lord Dit's eyes lit up and he nodded. He really didn't expect that Bufang would be so easily persuaded. After that, the crowd didn't say anything more. He glanced at the crowded restaurant. After bidding farewell to Bufang, Realm Lord Dit left with the few city lords and returned to Heaven Chief Hall. Now, Heaven Chief Hall was the headquarters of the whole Heaven Chief Realm. Bufang, on the other hand, continued his leisurely life. Time passed day by day. Sure enough, it was as Realm Lord Dit had said. Soon, Nether Prison sent experts into the immortal cooking realm. Driving out from behind the bronze gate, they entered Heaven Chief Realm. A huge metal warship floated majestically outside the city gate of the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. The terrifying pressure caused the experts above the immortal city to tremble in fear. From the warship, Nether Prison experts walked out and entered the city, discussing something with Realm Lord Dit and the others. After talking for 3 days without rest, the metal warship flew back to Nether Prison. Realm Lord Dit clasped his hands behind his back, standing on the city wall. His robe fluttered in the wind. He stared at the warship that sailed away, his eyes incomparably deep. Night fell. After a busy day, the Heaven Chief restaurant also closed for business. The door of the restaurant was closed. The lights in the kitchen were bright. Waves of fragrance surged out. Bufang walked out of the restaurant with a steaming hot dish. Placing the sweet and sour ribs in front of Lord Go, the latter's eyes lit up. He began to gobble down the food. On the table, dishes were also placed. Cece had worked hard for the whole day, and now she was resting. Eating Bufang's dishes and resting was really an incomparably pleasant thing. Yu, Hua, and the Black Dragon King all reached out their chopsticks, tasting the dishes. The aroma lingered in the restaurant. Sounds of praise rose and fell. Bufang was also eating. After finishing the dishes, everyone went back to rest. Cici excitedly rushed into the kitchen, opened the transportation gate, and stepped into the heaven and earth farmland. It was time to communicate with the other apprentices every day. Cici was incomparably excited about it. Bufang tidied up everything. He was a little speechless. He gently exhaled. It seemed that he really needed to fix Xiao Bai as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be many extraordinary things to deal with. His mind flickered. Bufang also entered the heaven and earth farmland. In front of the wooden hut, Niu Han-san had been waiting for Bufang for a long time. The will of the Great Path has finally been merged into the sword feather crane. I can continue the study of the death food tool. Niu Han-san was very excited. After more than half a year, he had finally succeeded in merging the will of the Great Path into the sword feather crane. It was a complicated process. Bufang's eyes brightened. Taking the sword feather crane from Niu Han-san, he began to cook in the wooden hut. After more than half a year, he had become much more familiar with the cooking of the sword pot. After a long time, an aroma lingered. In the basin-sized clay pot there was maroon crane meat. This was the newly completed sword pot. The sharp sword energy lingered, making people feel a surge of sharpness. Of course, after the cooking was done, there was still a difficult task. That was to carve the gourmet array into the sword pot. Only then could the death food tool be considered complete. And carving the gourmet array was a very complicated process. His spirit sea surged with stormy wave. In front of Bufang, an earthy yellow clay pot floated. The rich aroma lingered, and the sharp sword energy burst out. Its power was very terrifying. Niu Han-san had already hidden far away. He had a very accurate understanding of the power of the death food tool. A pale white array loomed. After it appeared, Bufang threw it into the clay pot. He had actually completed the process. Bufang was instantly delighted. The array he had fused into was explode, which was the same array as the destructive clay pot. The sword energy in the clay pot became more and more violent, as if it was going to explode at any time. And Bufang did not stop there. After merging a gourmet array, Bufang seemed not very satisfied. His mind flickered. Thousands of light spots gathered. They formed the imprison array. This array also slowly seeped into the clay pot. He's crazy. In the distance, when Niu Han-san saw Bufang's action, his face instantly turned pale. He had actually merged two gourmet arrays. This was suicide. One gourmet array was violent and hard to control, let alone two. Was he courting death? Niu Hansen's heart trembled, and he hurriedly retreated further. He craned his head, watching Bufang's action. Rumble! There seemed to be a loud explosion. Bufang's face showed a look of excitement. He did not know what would happen if he added two gourmet arrays. He had tried the perishing pot. Once he added the imprison array, it instantly exploded. But the sword pot in front of him was different. It seemed to be able to carry another gourmet array. This gave Bufang confidence. His mental force flowed out like strands, winding around the sword pot. The mental force in his spirit sea quickly poured out, which was not a small burden for Bufang. The entire heaven and earth farmland seemed to be restless. Cici and the others looked over curiously. An invisible wave spread, instantly spreading between heaven and earth. Then, a dazzling light shone. After a while, it slowly disappeared, and eventually, everything became silent. Bufang looked at the plain clay pot in front of him, his eyes showing a fanatical look. A death food tool that had merged two gourmet arrays. It was done. The crazy sword pot, the death food tool, was completed. Chapter 1230. It was the crazy sword pot, a death food tool. Bufang looked at the earthenware pot in his hand, in which streams of sword energy were swirling. Although it looked ordinary, The murderous aura and power it contained were frightening. Why was it called the Crazy Sword Pot? Because Bufang had frantically fused 2 gourmet arrays into it. The power of the sword pot was extremely terrifying. According to Bufang's estimation, this sword pot would be even more terrifying than the perishing pot. It was one of the most powerful attacks that Bufang could perform so far. Of course, the artifact spirit possession didn't count. After the artifact spirit possession, Bufang didn't know how strong Bufang's power would be, but it should reach the level of the little saint. Bufang wasn't sure about this. The artifact spirits in his spirit sea didn't seem very reliable. Of course, this crazy sword pot also had a shortcoming, which was that it consumed too much mental force. Bufang could feel that this crazy sword pot looked like a bottomless pit. It had an endless demand for his mental force. Bufang didn't know if his mental force was enough to operate this crazy sword pot. One crazy sword pot could even match the mental force of several perishing pot. It was precisely because the demand for mental force was too great that Bufang didn't choose to test the power of this crazy sword pot. Even activating the sword pot would be very strenuous for him, not to mention where to try it. Therefore, Bufang decided to put away the crazy sword pot and let it be covered in dust for the time being. However, Bufang was still very excited to have another lethal means. In the distance, Bufang's apprentice chefs were already stunned by what they saw. Of course, they knew about the death food tool that Bufang had. Whether it was the explosive meatball or the perishing pot, they were unimaginably powerful and thorough means for them. He didn't expect that Bufang had developed a new death food tool. With the death food tool, even a chef would be able to display powerful fighting strength. Bufang let the apprentices continue to communicate with each other. Occasionally, he would give them some pointers and teach them some new knowledge. Although Bufang had taken them in as his apprentices, Bufang had always adhered to the principle that the master led the way, while the cultivation was up to the individual. Bufang would not take the initiative to teach them anything. Only what suited him was the best. Of course, if the apprentices had any questions, they could ask him, and he would solve them one by one. Bufang glanced at the apprentices who were intensely analyzing the problem and then turned to leave the heaven and earth farmland. He returned to the restaurant. Bufang returned to his room and took a hot bath. He walked out of the bathroom amidst the hot steam. Wearing a bathrobe with his chest exposed, Bufang stretched his body. This kind of leisurely life made Bufang very satisfied. He leaned against the window. Outside the window, he looked at the bright lights and the gentle breeze. With a thought, Bufang took out a blue and white porcelain wine cup. He poured the wine and drank it by himself. When the wine entered his stomach, it warmed his heart. When his wet hair was dry, Bufang climbed onto the bed and slept quietly. It was a quiet night. The next day, the warm sunlight shone through the window, shining on Bufang's face. It was a gentle feeling, as if a small hand was caressing his face. It made Bufang feel a wave of satisfaction. Sitting up on the bed, Bufang rubbed his head, his black hair fluttering. He used a velvet rope to tie his hair. Then, he got up, stepped into the bathroom, and began to wash up. He walked out of the room. He happened to see Yu, who had just opened the door. Yu's gray-green hair fell, brushing against her delicate face. The latter raised his head and exchanged a glance with Bufang. After more than half a year of recuperation, Yu's face had become rosy, but it was difficult to change her gray-green hair back. After all, the outbreak of the cursed snake still affected her body. The two of them went downstairs. Bufang turned around and went into the kitchen, while Yu turned around and went into the store. In the kitchen, Cici was already full of energy, learning how to cook. Seeing Bufang come in, she cheerfully smiled and said good morning to Bufang. Bufang nodded. He grabbed the kitchen knife and began to practice his knife skills. Another busy day was about to begin. Cici's busy day began again. At the entrance of the restaurant, in a chair, Bufang lay back with his head held high. The warm sunlight shone on his body, causing his entire body to emit a lazy aura. In the distance, Realm Lord Dit soon arrived. At this time, there were not many customers in the restaurant. Realm Lord Dit said a few words to Bufang, then entered the restaurant and ordered some dishes. Only then did he seriously talk to Bufang about business. The so-called business was about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. A few days ago, the 9 clans of Nether Prison sent people here, and I've confirmed some things with them. Realm Lord D. Tai grabbed a blood lobster and skillfully peeled off its shell. After sucking the juice from the shell, he grabbed the blood lobster with one hand and said to Bufang. Bufang sat in the chair and looked at him indifferently. Crunch, crunch, the lobster shell was crushed by Realm Lord Dit's teeth, and he concentrated on pulling the shell. By the way, what did I want to tell you? Realm Lord Dit said as the glistening lobster meat jumped out of his hand. With a sizzle, it entered his mouth. The tender and smooth texture made Realm Lord D. Tai's face filled with excitement. That's the taste. That little girl Cece's cooking has improved. She's as good as you. Realm Lord Dit said, grinning. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Get to the point, Bufang said. Realm Lord Dit licked his finger that was stained with the spicy red juice. After sucking for a while, he looked at Bufang. Nether Prison has confirmed that all 9 clans will participate. However, although they have opened the tournament of the Great Path, they still think highly of themselves, so we won't meet them in the preliminaries and semi-finals. We will only meet them in the finals. Of course, we can also meet them in the team competition, said Realm Lord Dit. Bufang was puzzled by his words. In addition, Nether Prison has also communicated with the other clans. The first 3 rounds of the preliminaries will be held in Earth Prison. So in the next few days we will choose the contestants and go to Earth Prison, said Realm Lord Dit. After that, he pulled out another blood lobster and skillfully peeled its shell. With a cracking sound, spicy red gravy flowed out of the shrimp shell. Realm Lord Dit quickly stuck out his tongue. The Nether Puppeteer clan will participate, right? Bufang asked the question he was most concerned about. Of course. However, if you want to meet them, you may only have a chance if you make it to the finals in the individual competition or the top 10 in the team competition. Well, I advise you not to do anything to the Nether Puppeteer clan. Among the 9 clans in Nether Prison, except for the strongest D-Ting clan, the Nether Puppeteer clan is the most unfathomable. You'd better not provoke them. Realm Lord Dit said. Bufang twitched his mouth. He didn't want to provoke them. He just wanted to borrow the puppet heart of a 3-revolution sacred nether puppet from the Nether Puppeteer clan. Then I'll participate. Tell me the specific time, Bufang said. Well, no problem. By the way, Owner Boo, your cultivation base has reached the half-step Saint realm, but your cooking level is still at the 3rd grade Heaven Chief level. Do you want to try to break through and become a Qilin chef? Realm Lord Dit said as he swallowed a lobster. His oily hands grabbed the glass of wine that Cece had given him and gulped it down in one gulp. After drinking it, he bared his teeth and let out a sigh of admiration. Bufang frowned. Break through to Qilin chef? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. There was no hurry. The systems test for the Little Saint realm hadn't ended yet. As long as he passed the Little Saint realm test, Bufang would be no different from a Qilin chef. Of course, Bufang's cooking level could be compared to ordinary low-grade Qilin chef. However, it wasn't important. Every time Bufang broke through, it was related to the systems test. That was the most important thing. Thus, Bufang rejected Realm Lord Dit's good intention. Alright, I won't force you. I'm going to find the other contestants. Then, you can form a team and represent the Heaven Chief realm. Although the Heaven Chief realm has recovered, it hasn't been developed for a long time. We don't have enough top experts. Facing Earth Prison, Nether Prison, and the Abyss is a little difficult. Realm Lord Dit sighed, feeling a little worried. He finished the last blood lobster, shoving it into his mouth. Then, He paid the immortal crystals and swaggered out. Bufang looked at Realm Lord Dit's back as he left. He couldn't help but smirk. That fellow didn't look worried at all. As soon as Realm Lord Dit left, Bufang leaned on the chair, closing his eyes to rest. A new business day began. More and more people lined up in the restaurant. The warm sunlight made people feel comfortable. Lord Go was lying not far from Bufang, also basking in the sunlight. The next day Bufang got up, wearing the striped red and white vermilion robe, walking out of the restaurant. Then, he walked towards the Heaven Chief Hall. Inside the Heaven Chief Hall, it was a boiling cauldron of voices, with people coming and going. Dark clouds continuously gathered above, and thunder and lightning constantly bombarded the sky. It was the result of the Heaven Chief Hall's Heaven Chief test. Today, because of the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the entire Heaven Chief realm's immortal energy level seemed to have risen to another level. Hence, the number of geniuses in the Heaven Chief realm had increased. They were the hopes of the Heaven Chief realm. Bufang came to the meeting hall of the Heaven Chief Hall. In the hall, the city lords were sitting solemnly. Realm Lord Dit sat on the high seat, playing with his fingers. When Bufang came in, everyone's eyes turned to Bufang. "Owner Bu, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." When the Zhou lords saw Bufang, their eyes brightened. Pinching his thumb and middle finger, he said. Mengqi covered her mouth, smiling. Gongshu Baiguang cleared his throat. Bufang glanced at the Zhou lords with an expressionless face, then found a seat and sat down. It's rare that Owner Bu didn't refuse to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. "Congratulations," Realm Lord Dit said. "This time, the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path is divided into individual competitions and team competitions. Our opponents are the Netherworld, the Heaven Chief Realm, and the Abyss, and dozens of small worlds or continents with similar fighting strength. The rewards are very generous and tempting. Most importantly, this is a good experience. If the Heaven Chief Realm wants its descendants to no longer be flowers in a greenhouse, this kind of competition is indispensable. We must let them feel the real experts and the real geniuses." As soon as Realm Lord Dit saw Bufang sit down, he began to talk. Bufang glanced at him and said, "Speak human language." Realm Lord Dit smiled and said, "I just hope that Owner Bu can take them out to see the world." The participants in this competition were selected after a vote and discussion between the Realm Lord and several city lords. Realm Lord Dit said. Bufang frowned. "You don't want to send experts as strong as city lords? An ordinary disciple of the Heaven Chief Realm can't compare to the geniuses of Nether Prison, Earth Prison, and the Abyss. The city lords are very busy. The Heaven Chief Realm is now in the stage of soaring, and there are too many things to do. Naturally, they can't participate in the competition," Realm Lord Dit said with a wry smile. How could he not know what Bufang was talking about? "Owner Bu, don't worry. This time, we won't trouble Owner Bu too much. The position of team leader doesn't need to be held by Owner Bu. Owner Bu just needs to take care of those little guys. The main purpose is to let them see the world," Realm Lord Dit said. The contestants this time are 3 people selected from the geniuses of the top aristocratic families in the entire immortal cooking realm. The last one is a genius immortal chef from the first layer of the immortal cooking realm. In just half a year, he became a second-grade immortal chef from a poor family. He's not from an aristocratic family, but Realm Lord Dit still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by the impatient Bufang. Bufang felt that after Realm Lord Dit came back from the Abyss this time, his other skills didn't improve, but his ability to be a chatterbox had improved a lot. "Alright, let's not talk too much. Now let's let these young fellows meet Owner Bu." Realm Lord Dit grinned. Then, he raised his hand and clapped. The sound rang out. Then, a series of rustling footsteps rang out. Outside the door, several figures slowly appeared. A hearty and incomparably arrogant voice rang out. the great demon, whose name shakes the entire Heaven Chief realm. I've long wanted to meet him. Chapter 12:31. The Great Demon? I've long wanted to meet him. A clear and bright voice rang out from outside the door. Several figures quickly walked in from outside the door. There were 4 people in total. The 3 in the front were wearing luxurious chef robes, which were edged with gold, looking incomparably luxurious. Behind the 3 of them was a well-behaved youth. The youth pursed his lips as he looked at the immortal kitchen pavilion with some hope in his eyes. Of course, Bufang heard those words. The arrogance in those words made him a little surprised. Were all young people nowadays so arrogant? Bufang turned his head, looked over his shoulder, and saw the 4 people. Realm Lord Dit was a little embarrassed. He gave a dry laugh, but his eyes didn't look happy. As for City Lord Zhou and Mengqi, the awkwardness on their faces became even more intense. Tap, tap, tap. The 4 of them stepped into the meeting room of the Heaven Chief Hall. Their eyes instantly locked on Bufang. Bufang's face looked about the same size as them. There was nothing special about him. However, Bufang's identity made them not dare to look down on him. The Great Demon, the story of the Great Demon, whose name shook the entire Heaven Chief realm, was like a myth, constantly spreading among the diners in the restaurant. However, that was half a year ago. Today, the Heaven Chief realm had undergone earth-shaking changes. The miracle that the Great Demon had created could be achieved by many geniuses now. Within half a year, many geniuses in the Heaven Chief realm had broken through from the immortal chef realm to the 3rd-grade Heaven Chief realm. The record that the Great Demon was proud of had long been trampled by them. As for the Great Demon, he had single-handedly repelled thousands of Nether Prison's enemies. They didn't think much of it, thinking that it was just a myth. When a hero's name spreads, his deeds are always easily turned into myths. And the Great Demon was like this. Perhaps the Great Demon in reality was not like this. They had once sneaked into the Great Demon King's restaurant to take a look. The Great Demon did not participate in the cooking of the restaurant. Every day, he would sit in front of the restaurant and lazily bask in the sun. How could such a person be the Great Demon who could repel thousands of enemies all by himself? Zhu Yan narrowed his eyes and stared at Bufang. There was an inexplicable excitement in his heart. It wasn't the excitement of seeing his idol, but he felt that it was time to break a legend. Now, Zhu Yan was also a Grade 3 Heaven Chief. He had just made a breakthrough not long ago, and his cultivation was even stronger, reaching the 6-star true immortal realm. This level of talent and cultivation was rare even among the younger generation of the Heaven Chief realm. Beside him were a man and a woman. Like Zhu Yan, the man was Fang Yu, a disciple of an aristocratic family from the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm. The genius of the Fang family was also a Grade 3 Heaven Chief, and his cultivation was also at the 6-star true immortal realm. The woman was Mo Yen, a genius disciple of the Mo family, a top aristocratic family from the 4th floor of the Heaven Chief realm. Her cooking skill was Grade 3 Heaven Chief, and her cultivation base was slightly weaker at the 5-star true immortal realm, but it was still not bad. Zhu Yan and the others didn't like the last person. However, the latter was chosen by Realm Lord Di Tai and the other big shot. Naturally, he was extraordinary. The last person was from the 1st floor of the Heaven Chief realm, which used to be the most backward place in the Heaven Chief realm. He was not from an aristocratic family, nor was he a disciple of the powerful Heaven Chief realm. He was a commoner. However, he had created a legend as a commoner. He had reached the level of a Grade 3 Heaven Chief, and his cultivation base had reached the 6-star true immortal realm. He was called a genius by the 1st floor of the Heaven Chief realm. This person was Xianyuan Shehui. Naturally, Bufang also saw Xianyuan Shehui, and he slightly froze. He paused for a moment, then nodded at Xianyuan Shehui. Xianyuan Shehui pursed his lips. He didn't expect to meet Bufang again in such a way. However, he didn't say anything. He knew Bufang's talent and genius best, so he didn't show any arrogance. In front of Bufang, Xianyuan Shihui couldn't be arrogant. When he met Bufang for the first time, the latter was not even a heaven chief, and he didn't pay immortal crystals for his meals in his restaurant. Now, Bufang had become an existence he looked up to. He could fight against thousands of nether prison soldiers alone. He knew that this was not a legend, but a fact. Your Excellency, we're here. Zhu Yan straightened his chest, and a confident smile hung on the corners of his mouth. He first glanced at Bufang, then ignored him, turned to look at Mengqi in the distance, and nodded. The aristocratic families in the 5th layer were now in the 3rd layer of the Heaven Chief realm. Therefore, Mengqi was the focus of their attention now. Dit and the others nodded. Zhu Yan, you will be the captain of your team when you go to Earth Prison for the Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path. Owner Bu will go with you. Of course, if you encounter any difficulties, you can consult Owner Bu, Mengqi said. Zhu Yan raised his eyebrows when he heard that. Consult? Why would he need to consult Owner Bu? With his talent, he was aiming to get into the top 10 in the Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path. If he couldn't even get into the top 10, how would he have the face to face the elders of the Heaven Chief realm? Thank you for your reminder, Your Excellency. I understand. I will definitely lead my team to the top 10. Although he didn't care about it, he still bowed respectfully to Mengqi. Then, he turned to look at Bufang. This must be Owner Bu, the great demon? Nice to meet you, Zhu Yan said with a smile. He held out a hand to Bufang as if he wanted to shake hands with him. Bufang looked at Zhu Yan and felt that the latter was looking at him with a little dissatisfaction. However, Bufang didn't take it seriously. He was a young man, after all. Who didn't have some pride? Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth and raised his hand to shake Zhu Yan's. However, Zhu Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. The moment Bufang raised his hand, he pulled it back. He turned to look at Mo Yan, who was standing next to him, grinning and talking to her. Bufang's hand froze in place. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Young people nowadays, they're grumpy. Bufang twitched his mouth indifferently. He withdrew his hand and glanced at Zhu Yan. He was too lazy to say anything. In the distance, the eyes of Mengqi and the others changed instantly. They were a little dissatisfied with Zhu Yan's behavior, and they all frowned. They knew very well how strong Bufang was, and how terrifying Bufang's talent was. Although Bufang's cooking skills were only at the 3rd grade Heaven Chief level, the same as Zhu Yan and the others, the dishes Bufang cooked were not inferior to those of Qilin chefs. These were the things that Bufang was hiding. Zhu Yan and the other young men were too arrogant. Mengqi opened her mouth, wanting to scold him. However, he was obstructed by Realm Lord Dit. He will have to face these things sooner or later. Let them deal with it themselves. Berating them like this will only have the opposite effect, Realm Lord Dit said. However, his gaze fell on Bufang, whose expression was incomparably calm. He also observed a moment of silence for Zhu Yan and the others. Don't seek death, you won't die if you don't seek death. Well, since everyone knows each other, I won't make any introductions. This competition is held by the Netherworld and includes many surrounding worlds. Therefore, this competition is not only to show the strength of our Heaven Chief realm, but also to let the surrounding worlds understand the potential of our Heaven Chief realm. This heavy responsibility falls on your shoulders, Dit said. Bufang was not moved by such sensational words at all. However, Zhu Yan and the others enjoyed it very much. Everyone was so excited that they couldn't help clenching their fists. This kind of thing that represented the honor of a realm seemed to ignite the fire in the hearts of these young men. Bufang glanced at them and twitched the corner of his mouth. They're still too young. Well, Zhu Yan is the leader of this team. If he has anything he doesn't understand or can't solve, he can find Owner Bu. Now go back and get ready. We'll set out for Earth Prison in the afternoon. We'll see you off in person, Realm Lord Dit said. As soon as his voice rang out, Zhu Yan and the others clenched their fists and growled excitedly. Bufang rolled his eyes, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked out of the conference room of Heaven Chief Hall. Xianyuan Shehui and the others, who couldn't fit in with Zhu Yan and the others, quickly followed Bufang. Following behind Bufang, they soon left. In the eyes of Zhu Yan and the others, Xianyuan Shehui was a lowly commoner who was lucky enough to participate in this important competition with them. However, because Xianyuan Shehui was personally recommended by Gongshu Baiguang, they couldn't expel him. At most, they wouldn't expel him. Instead, they chose to isolate him. Isolating a person was the most terrible thing. Of course, they didn't expect that Xianyuan Shehui would be so shameless as to stick to the great demon. The morning didn't last long. Bufang returned to the Heaven Chief restaurant. After giving Cici some instructions, he gave her a few more explosive pissing meatballs and gave them to her to hide. You were called by Bufang to go to Earth Prison together. Now that the curse in Yu's body was in an important stage of being suppressed, Bufang didn't dare to leave her alone in the restaurant. You naturally wouldn't object to this. Wherever Bufang went, she would go. As long as there was delicious food, Hua actually wanted to go. She was bored in this restaurant every day and had nothing to do, which made her feel very uncomfortable. However, her proposal was rejected by Bufang. The latter held Yu's body, but Bufang flicked his finger on his forehead. His forehead was slightly swollen. This made Hua angry. She couldn't wait to have a duel with Bufang. Of course, in the end, they didn't have a duel. Bufang took Yu with him, and Little, who was lying on his shoulder leisurely. In half a year's time, Foxy's body had actually grown a lot fatter. The food was really too good. On his buttocks, 2 fox tails kept wagging. Following Bufang, Little, whose fox life was good. Bufang took Yu out of the restaurant and walked slowly toward the square outside the Heaven Chief Hall. Today, the first floor of the Heaven Chief World was the center of the whole Heaven Chief World, the economic center, and the commercial center. Many places had been expanded. The Heaven Chief Hall was remodeled, and a huge square was built around the Heaven Chief Hall. It was the largest square in the whole Heaven Chief World. When Bufang and Yu arrived, Zhu Yan and the others had already packed their luggage and were waiting there for a long time. When he saw Bufang and Yu beside Bufang, Zhu Yan's eyes suddenly narrowed. Senior the Great Demon, although you're my senior, you still have to abide by the rules. We're going to the competition, not on vacation, so we can't bring others with us. Zhu Yan glanced at Yu. With her gray-green hair, Yu looked even more charming and charming. Her beautiful face was a little pale and delicate, which could easily arouse a man's desire to protect her. She had a good figure and straight legs. Every part of her was exuding extreme temptation. Zhu Yan was very amazed. Not only him, but Fang Yu and Mo Yan were also attracted by Yu. Oh? Is there such a rule? Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and gave Zhu Yan a faint look. I'm the captain of the team. I just set this rule to ensure that we won't be distracted during the competition, Zhu Yan said, grinning. His eyes were still glued to Nethery's beautiful face. Of course, he regretted it a little. In order to annoy the great demon, he had rejected such a top beauty. It was indeed a loss of humanity. You set this rule? Bufang raised his brows. Before Bufang could make a move, a cold gleam flashed across Yu's cold face. This man doesn't want me to follow Bufang? His long legs moved, and his grayish-green hair fluttered in the wind. A faint fragrance of a woman filled the air. Zhu Yan's eyes went blank for a moment, and then he found that the breathtakingly beautiful woman had appeared in front of him. In the distance, Mengqi and the others were slowly approaching. They happened to see Yu standing in front of Zhu Yan. Then, their pupils constricted. You don't want me to follow Bufang? Yu said coldly, her face expressionless as she stared at Zhu Yan with her black eyes. Zhu Yan felt a chill run down his spine. As the captain of the team, I have the right. Looking at Yu's beautiful face up close, Zhu Yan almost suffocated. She was so beautiful that even City Lord Mingqi was not as beautiful as her. That kind of ice-cold temperament was really fascinating. However, Zhu Yan still wanted to say it out loud. However, he was only halfway through his sentence. His pupils constricted. Crack Nethery's pitch-black eyes turned completely black. Blue veins popped out from her eyes, spreading all the way to her ears. The sudden change was extremely terrifying. The corner of Realm Lord Dit's mouth twitched when he saw that. I told you that you won't die if you don't court death. Why doesn't this young man listen to me? Rumble. A gust of wind whistled past Zhu Yan. Zhu Yan felt cold all over and he couldn't move. A cold hand grabbed his neck and pressed him hard against the wall. The wall crumbled and cracked. Zhu Yan struggled with a look of horror in his eyes. Are you still going to let me go with Bufang? She asked faintly, her red lips parting slightly as she pinched Zhu Yan. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Because of the outbreak of the curse, Yu's temper was very bad. After all, she was a woman. There were always more than 30 days in a month when she went berserk. Chapter 1232. Nethery's sudden outburst startled the few people present. Most importantly, Zhu Yan was grabbed by the neck and pressed against the wall without being able to resist at all. It should be noted that Zhu Yan was a 6-star true immortal realm expert, and he was about to break through to the 7-star true immortal realm. He was so powerful that he was almost invincible among the younger generation. But the breathtakingly beautiful woman had strangled Zhu Yan with just one move. She was so beautiful and young. How could she be so irritable? Zhu Yan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He kept slapping Yu's arm, and when he touched Yu's skin, he felt that it was smooth to the touch. However, at this moment, he didn't have any erotic thoughts. He felt that if this woman wanted to kill him, she wouldn't be joking. She was simply a demoness. You don't want me to follow Bufang? Why don't you let me follow Bufang? You said coldly. Her dark eyes glinted coldly as she stared at Zhu Yan. Zhu Yan's face almost turned the color of a pig's liver. Boom. Nethery pressed him against the wall, and the whole wall seemed like it was about to collapse. Zhu Yan was aggrieved. Was this the woman after the great demon was killed? Mother had once said that behind every successful man, there was a woman. These words were not a lie. Go. Let's go. Zhu Yan finally gave in. He spat out these words with difficulty. He felt that if he didn't speak, he might really be strangled to death by this woman. As the leader of the team, if he died before he could even get out of the Heaven Chief boundary, in that case, he might really leave his name in history. Of course, it would be a joke. After getting Zhu Yan's confirmation, only then did the veins on Nethery's eyes disappear, and her pitch-black eyes regained their liveliness. She let go of him. Zhu Yan fell to the ground. His eyes widened and he covered his throat, coughing. Fang Yu and Mo Yen hurried over and patted Zhu Yan's back to comfort him. In the distance, Dit and the rest also walked over. He gave Zhu Yan a sympathetic look. This guy actually didn't know what was good for him and went to provoke the Netherworld woman. That woman's temper had become quite irritable recently. She didn't even give face to the Lord Realm Lord. Moreover, when they saw the grayish-green hair, they understood that the Netherworld woman's curse wouldn't be suppressed for much longer. Once it exploded, not to mention the Heaven Chief realm, even the entire Netherworld would be plunged into misery and suffering. This bastard actually dared to provoke the Netherworld woman? Alright, if you want to tag along, then let her tag along. Even if she doesn't participate in the team competition, it won't affect you much. Realm Lord Dit said. She glanced at Zhu Yan with a faint smile. This young man is so arrogant. It's good for him to be frustrated by you. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Yan felt a little aggrieved, but he couldn't say it out loud. Even Realm Lord Dit was on the Netherworld woman's side, so what else could he do? However, this made him even more determined to achieve a good result in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. He must change everyone's opinion of him. Alright, it's time to go. Don't waste time, Bufang said lightly. Realm Lord Dit and the others nodded. Then, with a thought, a spirit boat immediately emerged on the ground of the square. It was a dazzling spirit boat with arrays carved all over it. At first glance, one could tell it was an extraordinary boat. It was slightly smaller than a warship. However, the Heaven Chief realm didn't have a warship, so it could only replace it with a spirit boat. After all, the Heaven Chief realm didn't have a habit of invading other realms, so it didn't build many warships like the Nether Prison. It was not easy to find this spirit boat. When they saw it, Zhu Yan and the others were instantly excited. They were going to battle on a spirit boat. They were going to fight for the Heaven Chief realm. This feeling always inadvertently made their blood boil. As soon as they boarded the spirit boat, they seemed to have a sense of belonging in their hearts. Your Excellency, wait for our good news. We will surely defeat all our enemies and let the name of the Heaven Chief realm spread throughout the whole Netherworld. Zhu Yan said excitedly, clenching his fist. Realm Lord Dit was so embarrassed that he was about to break out. A newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. Although he was already very optimistic about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, the Heaven Chief realm had just recovered its strength and was in the early stages of soaring. They were the only young geniuses who could be sent to participate in the tournament. For the geniuses of the Netherworld, 6-star true immortals were no different from ants. Whether it was Earth Prison or Nether Prison, they could basically crush them. Swoosh, Realm Lord Dit only hoped that they wouldn't lose too badly. After all, he just wanted them to go out and see the world. The geniuses of any of the 9 groups in Nether Prison were strong enough to kill Zhu Yan and the others. After all, they were the foundation of Nether Prison. At the thought of this, Realm Lord Dit thought it was better not to dampen their enthusiasm, so he put on a gentle smile. Well, just do your best and go with a learning attitude. Every opponent is worth learning from. Also, if you have any difficulties or questions, you can consult Owner Bu. Realm Lord Dit emphasized again. Bufang was very talented, at least not weaker than those geniuses of the Netherworld. If they knew how to surround Bufang, they might be able to see the scenery from a higher place. Realm Lord Dit's words made Zhu Yan and the others unhappy. He was just a has-been the great demon. Although the people of their aristocratic families had told them before they left not to offend the great demon, they naturally had their own pride. However, as monstrous geniuses, they naturally had their own pride. A has-been the great demon was not worthy of their fear. If the great demon were a Qilin chef, they might respect him. However, in the 6 months that the Heaven Chief realm had been soaring, the great demon's strength and cooking skills had not improved at all. He was still a 3rd-grade Heaven Chief, the same level as them. They were all at the same level. What was there to be proud of? It should be noted that in the past 6 months, the Heaven Chief realm had several new Qilin chef. Almost all of their aristocratic families had Qilin chef. Would a Qilin chef be afraid of a 3rd-grade Heaven Chief? Ridiculous. Bufang naturally didn't bother to explain. He didn't care about these little fellows at all. Well, let's go now. Realm Lord Dit glanced at the people standing on the spirit boat, sighed with emotion, and said, Nether Prison was going to fuse with the land of the Netherworld, which was a major trend. Even the Heaven Chief realm couldn't stay out of it. Since that was the case, they had to work hard to fuse. At least, they had to let the Heaven Chief realm occupy a position in this trend. He thought of the time when he left the Divine Chef's inheritance. Hearing Yingya's words, his eyes turned solemn. The immortal cooking realm also needed to seize the opportunity in the coming general trend. The spirit boat slowly rose into the sky, and a stream of light spread out from the spirit boat. Very quickly, the entire spirit boat burst forth with speed, instantly turning into a streak of light, disappearing into the horizon. Around the square, groups of people had already surrounded it. Zhu Yan and the others were the new geniuses of the Heaven Chief realm in the past 6 months, so they were naturally familiar with them. Moreover, the name of Bufang, the great demon, was well known throughout the Heaven Chief realm. They were going to represent the Heaven Chief realm in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, which was a big event. It concerned the honor of the Heaven Chief realm, so how could they not pay attention to it? It's time for you guys to go out and see the world. There will be more activities like this in the future. If you don't want to be flowers in a greenhouse, you have to go through more trials. While Owner Boo is away, we have to work hard to improve our cultivation bases. Now that the Heaven Chief realm is developing rapidly, and its resources are soaring, everyone has a chance to break through to a higher realm. So, when Owner Boo returns next time, we'd better make some breakthroughs, Realm Lord Dit said, looking at Mengqi and the others. His face suddenly grew serious. Mengqi and the others nodded. Starting today, I'll go into seclusion until I become a divine chef. In addition, the Nether Prison experts will set up a projection array in the Heaven Chief realm to show the competition. Mengqi, please arrange for the Nether Prison experts to show the competition directly in the squares of the immortal cities. It's time to let the people of the Heaven Chief realm understand the powerful and cruel Netherworld. Realm Lord Dit said. Mengqi nodded. Can I show the competition in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? That way, I should be able to see the competition between Bufang and the others. That's not bad. The spirit boat streaked across the sky. Bufang stood at the front of the deck with his hands clasped behind his back. A gust of wind blew. It was weakened by the array, but there was still a slight breeze blowing over, stirring Bufang's hair and his vermilion robe. You stood at Bufang's side. There was a hint of disdain on her face. This spirit boat is not as good as my Netherworld ship. You said seriously. The Netherworld ship was specially made for you by old Hades, so it's naturally a treasure. How can this spirit boat compare to your Netherworld ship? Bufang said. You nodded with a little pride on her face. Her Netherworld ship was invincible. Inside the cabin, Zhu Yan and the others looked at Bufang and Yu from a distance. Xianyuan Shehui, on the other hand, sat quietly in a corner with her eyes closed, meditating and seizing the time to cultivate. You, come here. Bufang suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Yu and said. Yu paused, but she didn't say anything. She strode to Bufang's side. If you leaped into the air, she would be half a head shorter than Bufang. Her head would be right at Bufang's nose. Come closer. Bufang said, his face expressionless. Nethery's pitch-black eyes looked at Bufang. She softly said, "Oh." Then, she leaned forward and moved her head toward Bufang. In the cabin, Zhu Yan and the others' eyes almost popped out. These two shameless men and women. In broad daylight. Heaven and earth. How could they? The legendary great demon is nothing more than this. He can also be swayed by beauty. Mo Yen was very beautiful. As the proud daughter of an aristocratic family, she had her own pride, but in front of you, she only felt inferior. Fang Yu didn't say anything. He just blinked and watched curiously. Nethery moved her head closer to his. Bufang reached out his hand. An array flashed on his finger, and then he pointed it between Yu's eyebrows. Zhu Yan and the others also stared at her. What kind of special hobby is this? It feels like he's spoiling her. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't he have more intimate contact with her? The three of them just wanted to watch the show. Boom. Suddenly, the three of them felt a chill run down their spines. As they stared at Yu, they suddenly found that when the great demon's finger touched Yu's forehead, Yu's body burst into a dazzling light. A cold and gloomy aura instantly enveloped their bodies, almost suffocating them. Hiss. Then, there was only a jade-green color left in their eyes. It was a long, ferocious green snake. It was so terrible that it seemed to devour their minds. How horrible! Looking at the cursed snake, which seemed to have grown a little stronger, Bufang furrowed his brows. He loosened his hand, took out the black turtle constellation wok, and began to cook on the spirit boat. He could only use dishes to suppress the cursed snake. However, he had a feeling that the cursed snake was slowly developing a resistance to the dish. That would be a little difficult. Bufang withdrew his hand and began to cook. You stood obediently to one side, cocked her head slightly, and glanced coldly at the three people in the cabin. That made the three of them tremble, and they were drenched in sweat. They turned their eyes away, sat cross-legged, calmed their minds, and began to cultivate. Of course, all that was left in their hearts was fear. That jade-green snake was like a nightmare that shrouded their hearts. Swish! The spirit boat tore the sky, moving faster and faster. It broke through the void and began to jump. After a long time, after the jump, it shuttled through the boundless void. It sped toward Earth Prison of the Netherworld. As soon as it entered Earth Prison, sonic booms rang out one after another. Rumbling filled the air. One warship after another stretched across the sky. They surrounded the small spirit boat. Chapter 1233. One warship after another sped through the boundless void. Their speed was amazing, and they were accompanied by violent rumbling sound. Each warship was made of solid ore and metal, and they looked ferocious and ferocious. These were the warships from the surrounding worlds that were participating in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. With the Netherworld as the center, there were many worlds around it. There were dozens of worlds that could participate in the tournament. Among them, the more outstanding ones were the Winged Man Valley, the West Little Buddhism Realm, and so on. There were many great sage experts in these small worlds, as well as top great sage experts. Naturally, they were extraordinary. When the Heaven Chief Realm was in its heyday, the Heaven Tree was actually a top great sage. Unfortunately, the realm had experienced a decline, and the Heaven Tree was in the recovery stage. It was still a long way from being a top great sage. These small worlds were all around the Netherworld, and they had their own strengths that were not weaker than the Netherworld. But in fact, the Netherworld was guarded by the 9 clans, which were slightly weaker than them. So, these small worlds gave them face. Otherwise, given Nether Prison's bad temper, it might have attacked them with its warships. Now, Nether Prison was much more relaxed. When it was at its peak, its warships had attacked almost all the small worlds around the Netherworld, trying to unify the whole area and create the Great Netherworld. Unfortunately, that was many years ago when it was in its heyday. Now, it was plagued by internal and external troubles, and it was no longer as brave as before. However, a lean camel was still bigger than a horse, and it was still not something these small worlds could deal with. Swoosh! The warships tore through the void. The array rotated at high speed, producing a rumbling sound like thunder. Zhu Yen and the others, who were cultivating cross-legged in the spirit boat, were startled awake. They opened their eyes in shock. They walked out of the cabin and saw Bufang and Yu, who were sitting on the deck and eating. Why were they still eating? They had been eating all the way here. Because the cabin was sealed, they couldn't smell the aroma of the dishes. Otherwise, they would be shrouded in the temptation of the aroma and wouldn't be able to cultivate. Taking a deep breath, the aroma of the dish was like a small snake drilling into their mouths and nostrils, causing their minds to be moved. "It smells so good," Mo Yen exclaimed in admiration. You glanced at Mo Yen, and her eyes suddenly became sharp. Her hands moved faster, picking up the remaining pieces of meat and stuffing them into her mouth. Her cheeks immediately puffed up as she stared at Mo Yen and said, "No more." Mo Yen and the others were speechless. Did they look like the kind of people who would snatch food? Rumble. Immersed in the fragrance, they were once again shocked by the rumbling sound. Turning his head to look at the two sides, he was instantly dumbfounded. The warships on both sides were incomparably tall, and the spirit boat looked extremely small in front of these warships. When they raised their heads and looked up, they almost couldn't see the end of the walls of the warship. This is a warship? Zhu Yan swallowed his saliva and sucked in a breath of cold air. He had never seen such a huge warship before. It looked like a prehistoric behemoth. On the warship, someone leaned against the deck and looked down. Yoho! Which small world is this little boat from? Is it a joke? The people on the warship chuckled. Their words were filled with undisguised contempt. On the other side, there was another warship, which was also incomparably tall and emanated a terrible pressure that made Zhu Yan and the others a little breathless. It seems to be from the Heaven Chief realm. I heard that the fallen Heaven Chief realm has recovered and actually resisted the Nether Prison's invasion. Now it seems that it's just SOSO. It doesn't even have a warship. On this warship, someone also leaned against the railing and looked down. The people on the warship looked at the spirit boat as if it was a joke. They all sneered. The faces of Zhu Yan and the others were flushed with embarrassment. Damn it! These arrogant people! Bu Fang, on the other hand, was very calm. Where are these people from? Bu Fang asked curiously while stuffing meat into his mouth and chewing at the same time. Yu, cheeks puffed, glanced at the warship and said in a muffled voice, "The one on the left is from the Wandering Soul realm. It's a small world that specializes in cultivating souls. It was almost captured by the Nether Prison. Later, the Great Sage luckily broke through to the level of a top Great Sage, and only then was it able to resist the Nether Prison's invasion. The one on the right is the Vajra realm. It's a world of experts who specialize in cultivating fleshly bodies. You had stayed in Earth Prison, so you understand this better. The Nether Prison's invasion policy is not to invade small worlds with a top Great Sage. You know more about small worlds with a top Great Sage." Zhu Yan and the others did not know this, and they all sucked in a cold breath. They did not know what level a top Great Sage was at. However, they knew that even the Realm Lord of the Heaven Chief realm, Dit, was only at the level of a little saint. The Great Sage is almost at the level of the Heaven Tree. Bu Fang glanced at Zhu Yan and explained. The Heaven Tree? Isn't that the symbol of the Heaven Chief realm? When the Heaven Tree dies, the Heaven Chief realm dies, and when the Heaven Tree prospers, the Heaven Chief realm prospers. Was the top Great Sage comparable to the Heaven Tree? After watching the show for a while, the warship's arrays rumbled, and it flew away in a flash. It sped away in an instant. Only a trail of light was left behind, leaving a trail of dust in the air. Zhu Yan and the others felt very aggrieved. They could feel the contempt in the eyes of the people on the warship. However, they were powerless to fight back. It's okay. Just because our hardware is backward doesn't mean our strength is backward. When we get to Earth Prison, we'll prove the strength of the Heaven Chief realm with our strength. Zhu Yan comforted Mo Yen and the others. As the leader of the team, he felt it was his duty. Mo Yen and Fang Yu nodded hurriedly. Bu Fang glanced at them and sighed with emotion in his heart. They are really young, however. He didn't say anything to discourage them. It was good to be motivated. He was afraid that they would be discouraged before they reached Earth Prison. Boom! Zhu Yan, who was clenching his fists, felt that everyone's willpower was much stronger, and a smile bloomed on his face. However, with a rumble, a warship sped past them from the side, kicking up a cloud of dust. The impact of the blast made the spirit boat sway. This caused their expressions to turn even uglier. Damn it! Do these people know how to drive a ship? Can't they see our spirit boat? Are they blind? Zhu Yan roared. Swish! 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 Warships of various colors sped past them and overtook them. Some of the warships even let out shrill roars, sneering and making contemptuous gestures at them. Zhu Yan was furious. He lay on the edge of the spirit boat and roared back at them. Sizzle Bu Fang and you looked at Zhu Yan and the others and couldn't help but shake their heads. Young, in front of Bu Fang and you was a grill, on which pieces of fat meat were sizzling with oil and fragrance. During the leisure time on the spirit boat, barbecuing was the most enjoyable thing. The aroma wafted toward them. Zhu Yan and the others, who had been shouting until their mouths were dry, suddenly felt hungry. They swallowed and glanced at the oily barbecued meat. Then, they also propped up the grill and began to grill meat like Bufang. Time passed. After 2 days and 2 nights of travel, the spirit boat finally approached Earth Prison. Buzz, it broke through the barrier of Earth Prison. Instantly, the entire spirit boat began to sway. The next moment, it turned into a stream of light and sped across the sky. The sky was clear, and the land was vast. The people on the spirit boat were amazed by the vastness of Earth Prison. Bufang stood on the deck with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the boundless Earth Prison without batting an eyelid. There was a look of excitement in Nethery's black eyes. After all, strictly speaking, Earth Prison was her home. Zhu Yan and the others had never seen the world, so they marveled at the richness of Earth Prison's spiritual energy, the vastness of the land, and the endless number of strange plants. Even Xianyuan Xiaohui, who had been cultivating in the spirit boat, walked out of the cabin, took a deep breath, and felt the majesty of Earth Prison. Boom! 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 Rumbling sounds rang out one after another. Everyone looked over their shoulders. They immediately saw one warship after another crash into the barrier of Earth Prison. Then, they emerged from the barrier. Pressure spread in all directions. Buzz, suddenly in the sky, a rumbling sound exploded. A majestic pitch-black metal warship slowly sailed over and hovered in front of the spirit boat. Zhu Yan hurriedly stopped the spirit boat. Tap, tap. On the warship in front of them, a figure slowly appeared on the deck. She looked down at the whole spirit boat. It was a beautiful woman with a heroic spirit. She was wearing a black armor that glowed with colorful light and exuded a majestic aura. The woman waved at the spirit boat. Immediately, the whole spirit boat soared into the sky and landed on the warship. Zhu Yan and the others took a deep breath. This warship must be the guide warship of Earth Prison. They walked out of the warship. He immediately saw the appearance of the woman in black armor who exuded a heroic aura. When they saw her clearly, they couldn't help but gasp. What the F***CK? What's going on? Zhu Yan and the others widened their eyes. They looked at the guide of Earth Prison, then at you. Why do these two look so similar? Looking at the woman, Bufang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He didn't expect that it would be this woman who came. She must have learned that you had also come to Earth Prison. Carrying a heavy sword on her back, Yuji's face was full of heroic spirit. She glanced at the crowd and finally fixed her eyes on you. When she saw Yu's gray-green hair, her pupils shrank. What happened to your hair? Did the curse break out? Yuchi took a deep breath, and her figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. When she reappeared, she was already at Yu's side. Yuji raised a trembling hand and brushed Yu's gray-green hair. Her eyes suddenly became sharp. The next moment, the heavy sword on her back burst out. A horrible sound rang out. The sword swept toward Bufang. Zhu Yan and the others' faces changed dramatically, and they trembled all over. The pressure emitted by this woman made them not even dare to move. Her aura was too terrible. She seemed to be even scarier than the Realm Lord. Who is this woman? Bufang's expression did not change. He stood where he was with his hands clasped behind his back. The heavy sword swept over and suddenly stopped an inch away from the tip of Bufang's nose. The sharp sword energy caused Bufang's hair to flutter. You took Yuji's hand, frowned, and kept shaking her head. Sister, it's not Bufang's fault. You said. I asked him to take good care of you, but he failed, Yuji said coldly. The curse has been suppressed. It's fine now, Yuji said coldly. The curse has been suppressed. It's all right now. She gave you a deep look, then glanced at Bufang. Only then did she withdraw her aura and put the heavy sword back on her back. You are sent by the Heaven Chief Realm to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, aren't you? I'm the guide responsible for guiding you to the arena. I'm Yu-Ji, one of the Earth Prison Overlords, she said lightly, glancing at Zhu Yan and the others. So weak. After the introduction, she said nothing more. Zhu Yan and the others nodded, trembling. The Earth Prison Overlords were so domineering. The next moment, Yu-Ji took a step forward. She turned into a beam of black light and rushed out, hovering in the sky and facing the warships that had broken through the barrier and entered Earth Prison. All warships, follow the Earth Prison's guide warship. Kill anyone who dares to cause trouble, Yu-Ji said coldly. As soon as her voice rang out, the heavy sword on her back fell into her hand. She raised it, and a terrible sword energy erupted from her body. Then, one aura after another rose from the warships, contending with Yu-Ji's aura. Yu-Ji focused her eyes. The edgeless heavy sword swept down. The sword energy blotted out the sky and smashed toward the warships. Someone in the warships attacked. After fighting for a while, the sound of someone coughing up blood rang out. After that, all the warships became obedient. Yu-Ji returned to the warships, her face cold. The Earth Prison warships rumbled and sailed across the void. Inside the warships, Zhu Yan and the others had long admired Yu-Ji. This was the attitude of an expert. Of course, they were also very curious about the relationship between Yu-Ji Bufang and Yu. At this moment, in their eyes, the so-called Great Demon had become a weak man who relied on a woman. If it weren't for Yu, the Great Demon would have been cut in half by this Earth Prison Overlord. The so-called Great Demon was nothing more than this. Earth Prison's warships flew at a much faster speed than the spirit ship. After flying for a long time, after crossing hundreds of thousands of miles, the warships finally stopped. The sound of a surging river echoed through the void like the roar of a beast. Zhu Yan and the others lay prone on the warships and looked down. He saw a roaring river flowing with blood. In the river, there were white skulls and countless remnant souls wailing in anguish. The river made their hearts tremble. They felt as if their souls were about to be sucked into it, and they were shrouded in fear. Earth Prison was indeed terrible. Even a river was so frightening. The river seemed to be bleeding, shrouded in death and filled with destruction. The venue for the preliminary round of the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path was this bleeding river. Chapter 1234. The bleeding river was called the Acheron River. Bufang was no stranger to the Acheron River. He had been here once. At that time, he was still very weak and did not know how powerful the Acheron River was. Today, Bufang's knowledge was extraordinary. Looking down from the warship in the sky, he could see the horror of the Acheron River. The Acheron River surged. Dried bones flowed in the river, and remnant souls roared, bringing with them a frightening will. However, what Bufang could not forget was the Acheron grass by the Acheron River, and the senseless lotus floating on the Acheron River. He used to brew the Acheron helplessness wine, which was made with the Acheron grass and the flower of helplessness as the main ingredients. On the day it was opened, the fragrance of the wine filled the entire valley of Gluttony. At that time, he only used the one-leaf Acheron grass and the ordinary flower of helplessness. If he could use the 9-leaf Acheron grass to brew the Acheron helplessness wine, it could even surpass the 3 great wines of the abyss. However, Bufang just thought about it. After all, the 9-leaf Acheron grass was the treasure of the great sage Acheron. It was an existence that even the Lord Go was afraid of. Before, Bufang did not know how strong the great sage Acheron was. He did not have an intuitive idea. However, now he was very clear that the great sage Acheron was not weaker than the Lord Go. Even the woman in the God-vanishing mountain was very afraid of the great sage Acheron. Although the Acheron River was not a forbidden land, because of the existence of the great sage Acheron, it could be compared to a forbidden land. In the Acheron Valley, there was a fierce spirit beast, the blood-illuminating dragon. The venue for the competition this time was actually here? The great sage Acheron agreed? Fortunately, the venue was not set at the source of the Acheron River, but at the middle and lower reaches of the river. The Acheron River here was not that scary. Bufang recalled his experience on the Acheron River. The Bridge of Helplessness on the Acheron River, the Boat of Rebirth, and the Soul Fisherman, they were all very mysterious. In fact, the Acheron River was not inferior to the Forbidden Land. Rumbling sounds resounded endlessly. The warship quickly descended to the ground. Below, there was a huge city. The city was built on the middle and lower reaches of the Acheron, and was very bold. Perhaps this was also the reason why the Acheron River had not become a forbidden area. The main reason was that the Acheron River was too long. It ran through the entire infernal realm. Moreover, the Acheron River was much milder than the Forbidden Lands. Back then, Bufang had directly landed at the source. It was still a long way from here, so he did not discover the city. This is Forbidden Soul City, the venue of the preliminary competition. Enter the city, register, and someone will take you to your accommodation. Yu-ji, carrying a heavy sword on her back, glanced at Bufang and said. Then, she ignored Zhu Yan and the others and asked them to disembark. Boom! Boom! The 6 of them landed one after another. You followed Bufang. They stood outside the city gate. In the sky, warships hovered and stopped in the distance, giving them a majestic feeling. The towering city gate was built with blood-red bricks and looked awe-inspiring. The city gate was arched, and there were hell guards dressed in black armor blocking the way. Zhu Yan and the others took a deep breath. At last, they arrived at the venue of the competition. Bufang glanced at Forbidden Soul City. It was a magnificent city with a terrible aura. Obviously, it was guarded by experts. In front of the gate, people came and went, and people of all kinds entered the city. I've heard of Forbidden Soul City, but I've never been here, Yu said. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. They didn't stop for long. Zhu Yan and the others had already taken the lead and walked into the distance. When they arrived at the city gate, they were stopped. Many people's eyes fell on Zhu Yan and the others. Many people sneered, mainly because Zhu Yan and the others' cultivation bases were too weak. They were only 6-star true immortals. The weakest of the contestants was a 9-star true immortal, and some were even half-step saints. The contestants from some stronger small worlds were all 1 revolution little saint. Relatively speaking, 6-star true immortals were extremely weak. Zhu Yan and the others were full of confidence when they participated in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. But when they sensed the auras of the contestants from other small worlds, their expressions changed. They had long since lost their previous complacency. They found that the auras and cultivation bases of almost all the contestants from other small worlds seemed to be stronger than theirs. This was very unreasonable. The gazes of mockery and predatory gazes made them feel very uneasy. Bufang followed behind them, his expression as calm as ever. When Zhu Yan and the others saw Bufang's calm expression, they began to admire Bufang's mental fortitude. After all, as far as they knew, Bufang's cultivation base seemed to be not much weaker than theirs. Boom! 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 The ground trembled. Behind Zhu Yan and the others came a group of burly bald men with an average height of more than 2.5 meters. These people were bare-chested. Their upper bodies were covered with dragon-like muscles. Their bronze-colored skin seemed to reflect the brilliance of steel. Yo, we meet again, little weaklings from the Heaven Chief realm. The leader of the group, a burly bald man, spoke. His voice rang out like a copper bell, shaking the crowd's ears. As he walked, the ground seemed to tremble. Zhu Yan and the others widened their eyes as they recalled Yu's introduction. These burly men should be experts from the Vajra region. A look of anger appeared on Zhu Yan's face. He could ignore the sarcastic gazes around him, but this burly man's direct taunts made him a little angry. Boom! Boom! The ground seemed to have caved in. These burly men walked over, leaving footprints on the ground. The eyes of their leader seemed to be bursting with cold mockery. "So you're the leader of your Heaven Chief Realm team? You're simply as weak as an ant. I can crush you to death with one finger." The burly man grinned and said. Zhu Yen glared at the burly man. His chest was burning with anger. "Ant? I'd like to see how strong you are." Zhu Yen couldn't see through the burly man's cultivation base, but it didn't stop him from getting angry. Perhaps this burly man was only a little stronger than him. If it was only a little, Zhu Yen might still have a chance. After all, his family had prepared a lot of treasures for him before he left. "Yo, do you want to die?" The burly man narrowed his eyes and laughed sarcastically. The Heaven Chief Realm was indeed strong when it was at its peak, but now it was very weak. "Hurry up and get into the city. If there's a conflict, settle it in the competition. Don't block the way." The cold voice of the gate guard rang out. Zhu Yen froze and gritted his teeth. The burly man grinned. He didn't care about Zhu Yen and the others, but he didn't dare to make trouble in Earth Prison. The woman from Earth Prison had suppressed an expert from the neighboring warship with one sword strike. That kind of strength was enough to show how strong Earth Prison was. The Vajra realm couldn't compare to Earth Prison. "Don't let me meet you in the arena, or I'll kill you with one finger," the burly man sneered. Then, he strode into Forbidden Soul City. Zhu Yan's face turned as red as a pig's liver, but he felt powerless. When he was in the Heaven Chief Realm, he was complacent and confident. But when he stepped into Earth Prison, he realized that his cultivation base was nothing at all. "Don't be discouraged, Brother Zhu. We're competing with the Heaven Chief Realm. If we let them compete with us in cooking, we'll definitely beat them." Mo Yen looked at the sullen Zhu Yen and comforted him. Zhu Yen nodded seriously. Then, the three of them stepped into the city. Bufang was speechless as he listened to their conversation. If they wanted to compete in cooking, why would they come to Earth Prison? Were they out of their minds? The Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path this time was a competition of cultivation base and fighting prowess. These little fellows from the Heaven Chief Realm were still too young and inexperienced. But it didn't matter. They still had a lot of time and they would grow. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked toward the city with you. Xianyuan Shihue followed at Bufang's side. He knew very well that following Bufang was much better than following the arrogant Zhu Yen. Zhu Yen was just a spoiled son of an aristocratic family. Outside the Heaven Chief Realm, he was nothing. Forbidden Soul City was very large. Among them, there were inns specially arranged for contestants from different worlds to stay. All the contestants from different small worlds stayed here. Bufang soon found his room. Suddenly, he froze because the competition staff had only prepared one room for him. Glancing at Yu, who was blinking at him behind him, Bufang rubbed his head. As time went by, the atmosphere of the competition grew stronger and stronger. In addition to the natives of Earth Prison, there were more contestants from other small worlds in Forbidden Soul City. After all, it was a competition held by Nether Prison, so they naturally had to come. Besides, the competition was of great significance. The ranking in it could reflect the overall strength of their small world. This was very important. On the first day Bufang and the others arrived, there was no competition. Everyone was resting. Various competition venues had been built in Forbidden Soul City. Of course, there were projection arrays. This was so that all the small worlds could see the competition. On the second day, the competition officially began. On this day, all the contestants from the small worlds had to go to the square in Forbidden Soul City, where many arenas had been set up. Today, they would draw lots for the team competition and the individual competition. There were too many people participating in this competition. The preliminary round would go through several rounds, during which anyone who failed would be eliminated. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Bufang, who was sitting in the center of the room with you and grilling meat, rose to his feet and opened the door. As soon as the door opened, a fragrant aroma wafted out. The crowd outside the door was dumbfounded. When the door opened, Bufang saw Mo Yen and Fang Yu, while Zhu Yan, who had been very active before, was hiding in the back. That made Bufang a little strange. "What's wrong?" Bufang said lightly. Fang Yu and the others were speechless when they smelled the aroma in the air. A man and a woman were in the same room, and they were grilling meat. The great demon was really a weirdo. "We're going to draw lots today, and we asked you to come with us," Mo Yen said. Bufang nodded. He narrowed his eyes, looked at Zhu Yan, who was hiding in the distance, and raised his eyebrows. "What's wrong with him?" Mo Yen paused, then her face became a little strange and embarrassed. Ahem! Mo Yen didn't know what to say, and Fang Yu was speechless. "He was beaten up," Xianyuan Shehui said naturally. His relationship with Zhu Yan wasn't very good, so he didn't feel any burden to say it out loud. "You!" Zhu Yan growled as if he was a little angry. Bufang raised his hand and motioned for Fang Yu and Mo Yen to move to the side. Then, Zhu Yan, who had been hiding behind them, poked his head out. When he saw, the corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. How badly did Zhu Yan get beaten up? His whole face was twisted, bruised and swollen, and there were streaks of blood spreading from the swelling. The opponent's control of power was very delicate. His power had penetrated the wound and kept flowing through it, making it impossible for Zhu Yan's power to heal the wound, which kept his bruised and swollen face. From the outside, it was really hard to tell what Zhu Yan looked like. He really got beaten up. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. Zhu Yan felt wronged. He had always been unconvinced by the great demon, and now that the great demon had seen his disgraceful performance, he was very angry. Immediately, he felt a little resentful toward Xianyuan Shehui. In the distance, the door of the room opened. A creaking sound rang out. One burly figure after another came out of the room. It was a group of people from the Vajra realm. Coincidentally, the group of people from the Vajra realm actually lived opposite them. When the group of burly men from the Vajra realm appeared and saw Zhu Yan's miserable condition, they burst out laughing mercilessly. Their laughter was full of contempt. "Little trash! Do you feel good being beaten up?" Chapter 12:35. Does it feel good to be trampled? A mocking voice rang out. The burly Vajra realm man looked contemptuously at Zhu Yan, whose face was bruised and swollen. The sneer in his eyes was not concealed at all. Zhu Yan trembled with anger, but at the same time, he felt a wave of powerlessness. He was helpless and desperate. He was considered a genius in the Heaven Chief realm, but when he came here and met a real genius, he was nothing at all. His opponent was a genius from the Vajra realm. His fleshly body was so strong that he could resist knives and swords with it. All his attacks hit the burly man, but they had no effect at all. So he was beaten hard. His face was bruised and swollen, and he couldn't resist at all. It was like a nightmarish memory, causing his entire body to tremble. Mo Yen and the others were also a little helpless. They had even lost all hope. After staying in Forbidden Soul City for a day, they had also seen the monstrous geniuses from various worlds. They thought they were strong and monstrous enough, but when they really met the experts and geniuses from other worlds, they realized how small they were. They were too naive and young in the past. When they thought of what they had boasted in front of Realm Lord Dit, they felt their faces burning. When they thought of how ignorant they were, they realized how stupid they were. The burly Vajra realm men laughed contemptuously. They glanced at Bufang, then at Zhu Yan, and their laughter grew louder. Many people in the surroundings shot their gazes over, watching curiously. Many people recognized Zhu Yan and the others. The Heaven Chief realm was somewhat famous in the surrounding great world. After all, Heaven Chief realm used to be as powerful as Nether Prison. Of course, the Heaven Chief realm had declined today. Oh, it turns out that you're the contestants from the Heaven Chief realm. You're a little weak. Someone from another small world said disdainfully with a faint smile. Then, a deep laugh rang out. Zhu Yan and the others felt their faces burning. His eyes had turned red from anger. Mo Yen and the others fell silent, while Fang Yu bowed his head and said nothing. Xianyuan Shehui seemed to have expected this situation, so she didn't show any expression. Compared to these aristocratic children, he was much more mature, because he often encountered such situations where the strong bullied the weak. Zhu Yan and the others thought that they were geniuses, but when they saw the vast world, they realized that they were nothing. Zhu Yan was a little annoyed. He felt that he had disgraced the Heaven Chief realm. Bufang looked at Zhu Yan in surprise. He did not expect Zhu Yan to have such a sense of honor. However, since Bufang now represented the Heaven Chief realm, he could not let Zhu Yan be bullied like this. No matter what, before Realm Lord Dit left, he told him to take good care of these little fellows. Therefore, with his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang strode forward slowly. He walked out. "Tell me, who hit you?" Bufang said lightly. He glanced at Zhu Yan, and what he said made Zhu Yan completely stunned on the spot. The Vajra region experts in the distance narrowed their eyes. They seemed to be interested. Zhu Yan pursed his lips, gritted his teeth, and said, "I don't need you to stand up for me. I was beaten by myself, so I had to endure it." After saying that, he turned around and ran away. Mo Yen and the others felt somewhat helpless. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. This boy in the distance, when they saw Zhu Yan turn around and leave, the Vajra realm experts burst out laughing. Their laughter seemed to lift the roof. The leader of the group widened his eyes and stared at Bufang with a grin. He walked up to Bufang, who was more than 2 meters tall. He was more than 2 meters tall, and when he looked down, he seemed to be looking down at Bufang. "You want to stand up for your friend? I'll wait for you. When I meet you people from the Heaven Chief realm in the arena, I'll beat them all into dead dogs," the man said. After that, he turned his head and spat. "What the hell? Do you still think you're the Heaven Chief realm in its heyday? A few 6-star true immortals dare to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. You really don't know how to spell the word death. What a bunch of bumpkins." The man glanced at Bufang and sneered. Then, he turned around and walked away. The people from the other small worlds also laughed in low voices. Mo Yen and the others blushed, and their hearts were filled with discomfort. They represented the Heaven Chief realm, and now they were being ridiculed like this, but they couldn't fight back. They were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. "How arrogant!" Bufang exhaled softly and said expressionlessly, looking at the burly men's backs. Mo Yen and the others fell silent. Even the great demon has to submit under the pressure of these burly men. Sure enough, the legendary great demon no longer has the demeanor of fighting 10,000 alone. Buzz! Suddenly, a light flashed in Bufang's hand. A piece of white, translucent tofu appeared, emitting warm steam. Mo Yen and the others looked puzzled when they saw the tofu in Bufang's hand. Xianyuan Shehui looked at Bufang, and the corners of her mouth curved upward. "Bufang is going to stir up trouble again," she thought. "We're from the Heaven Chief realm, and we're chef. Since we're chefs, we should use the means of chefs to deal with him," said Bufang. Mo Yen and the others froze. Suddenly they took a deep breath. "Hey, big guy!" Bufang raised his head and shouted at the burly man in the distance, his face expressionless. The group of burly men from the Vajra realm turned their heads. "What are you doing?" the burly man, who was glaring at them, asked. Suddenly, a smacking sound rang out. He felt a layer of warm substance on his face, which carried a faint fragrance of beans. "What the hell?" All the people from the Vajra realm froze, looking incredulously at the white tofu residue on the leader's head. "I heard you're going to kill me in the arena?" I'm looking forward to it, Bufang said. The burly man wiped his face and looked at the tofu residue on his palm. Suddenly, a terrible aura burst out of his body. His blood and chi rumbled like thunder, like raging waves pounding on a table. This was the Vajra realm's fleshly body cultivation method, and its blood and chi were extremely strong. How dare you hit me with tofu? Green veins popped out on his forehead and the burly man's eyes were wide open, filled with malevolence. Smack, as soon as he finished speaking, another piece of white tofu hit his head. Even with his cultivation base, he didn't know how the tofu came to him, and he was thrown in the face. Hiss, the sound of people sucking in their breaths rang out around them. How dare someone from the Heaven Chief realm fight back? He really hit a Vajra realm expert in the face with a piece of tofu. Many people felt incredulous, and there was a look of surprise in their eyes. It should be noted that the Vajra realm was a realm that could not be underestimated. It was a realm that could not be underestimated. Naturally, their contestants were also extraordinary. How could the Heaven Chief realm dare to offend them? You're courting death. Roar. A furious roar rang out. His blood and chi seemed to turn into a column of blood that shot up into the sky. The burly man stared at Bufang, his eyes bloodshot. As if he had rubbed tofu off, the ground beneath his feet caved in deeply. Crack, a battle was about to break out. Oh no, a massacre was about to break out. Mo Yen and the others trembled, and their hearts were filled with despair. They cursed inwardly. The great demon was indeed unworthy of his reputation. He dared to provoke the other side. He was courting death. I'm going to tear you, a little reptile from the Heaven Chief realm, to pieces. The man whose face was covered in tofu was so furious that he roared. He stomped his foot, and his figure suddenly burst out. The oppressive aura made the whole room seem as if it was about to explode. Bufang was very calm. Holding a piece of tofu in his hand, he squinted at the burly man. Suddenly, just as Bufang took 2 steps forward, a figure appeared in front of him. A roar suddenly exploded beside the burly man's head. The burly man's face suddenly changed, turning pale. At this moment, the blood and chi in his body also collapsed, and his whole body staggered backward. You, outside the corridor, a valiant and beautiful figure slowly walked over. Carrying a sword on her back, she came with a cold face. Go to the square and gather. Don't waste time. If you want to fight, please go to the arena. Yuchi walked out with a heavy sword on her back and said coldly. She glanced at the burly man, her face cold. Who allowed you to attack? Earth Prison Lord. Yuchi. The burly man dared to be presumptuous in front of Bufang and the others, but in front of Yuchi, he was as timid as a dog. She was a big shot who could force a warship to retreat with one sword strike. How could the burly man dare to fight Yuchi head-on? It's that kid who hit me with tofu first. The burly man glanced at Bufang and said hatefully. Slap. However, as soon as he said that, Yuchi slapped him in the face. He hit you with tofu and you hit him back? Do you know what time it is now? It's time to gather in the square and draw lots. If you're late, can you bear the responsibility? Or does the Vajra realm want to be disqualified? Yuchi said. The Vajra realm expert was dumbfounded. What did she mean? He was hit with tofu, and in the end it was his fault? Why was the situation so strange? The people around were also dumbfounded. They found Yuchi's logic very unbelievable. The corners of Mo Yen and the others' mouths twitched. They finally understood why Yuchi was protecting Bufang. Mo Yen and Fang Yu glanced at Nethery, who looked cold. They couldn't help but curse inwardly. It turns out that Yu's sister is here. No wonder the great demon suddenly became so tough. In their minds, they were more convinced that the great demon was living off a woman. The burly man from the Vajra realm felt wronged. But they also understood. Yuchi was here to stand up for Xiao Bai from the Heaven Chief realm. They had no chance to get back at her today. However, Little Lizard, from the Heaven Chief realm. I'd like to see if I can still protect you in the arena. The man from the Vajra realm said coldly, then left. The people around looked at Bufang with disdain. He deserves to be the chef from the Heaven Chief realm. He's quite good at living off a woman. Bufang was very calm. Living off a woman? He's just not fighting, but if he goes berserk, even I am afraid. Yuji gave him a deep look, but she didn't say anything. Everyone, go to the square. Don't waste time. Hurry! Yuchi shouted coldly, her voice resounding through the entire inn. Then, everyone walked out of the inn and headed for the square. Zhu Yan ran away first. So Bufang walked unhurriedly to the square with Mo Yen, Xianyuan Shehui, and the others. The square of Forbidden Soul City was very large and vast. Because of the preliminaries, the whole square was crowded with people. Bufang could not help but feel a little absent-minded. It's a spectacular scene. Yuchi is at Yu's side, and I don't know what she's talking about. Mo Yen and the others looked at Bufang strangely. The layout of the square was very interesting. There was a huge official road in the middle, and if one kept going, they would enter the circular square, which was set up with 5 arenas. The 5 arenas were located in 5 different positions in the square. It's very lively and spacious, but I feel something is missing. Bufang looked at the crowd, clasped his hands behind his back, and pondered. What was missing? No, nothing is missing, right? Mo Yen and the others looked at Bufang in confusion, not understanding what he was thinking about. Yuchi squinted at Bufang. What is this boy up to now? In the distance, Zhu Yan came over with a swollen face and a bloody nose, turning his head away from Bufang's face. Bufang found it a little funny. Although Zhu Yan was the son of an aristocratic family and had the arrogance that a son of an aristocratic family should have, he had a rare sense of honor. He must have been worried that he would be beaten up by the burly man from the Vajra realm if he stood up for him, so he turned around and ran away. He's a little cute. Zhu Yan, you'll be the one to draw lots later. Bufang glanced at Zhu Yan and said lightly. Zhu Yan turned his head and seemed a little surprised. Then, he said stubbornly, I'm the captain of the team. Of course I'll go. Then what are you going to do? Yuchi narrowed her eyes. She had a feeling that Bufang was up to something. Bufang glanced at Yuchi. Then, he stretched out his hand and drew a circle in front of him. There are a lot of people here, and it's very lively. But I'm lacking something to eat, Bufang said. Lacking something to eat? Mo Yen and the others froze. Then, all of them widened their eyes. Could it be that the great demon is thinking of, that's right. I'm going to open a stall, Bufang said. The corner of Xianyuan Shehui's mouth twitched. Sure enough, Owner Bu is still Owner Bu. We're here to compete, not to open a stall. Chapter 1236. Open a shop? You really have an idea. Yuchi had a speechless look on her face. She turned her head and glanced at the densely packed crowd in the public square. There are all kinds of people here. Why would this guy want to open a shop here? Is he crazy about making money? At this moment, Bufang was very excited. As soon as the idea came to his mind, he couldn't hold it back. It was difficult to get rid of it. He rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. He needed a storefront to open a shop, but he could open a stall in the square. A stall could also achieve great success, attract countless people, and become a place where many people flock to. Bufang nodded. He had a general idea in his mind. System. If I set up a stall in the square, the immortal crystals or nether crystals I earn can be counted as turnover, right? Bufang thought to himself and asked the system. The system was silent for a while, as if calculating the feasibility. In the end, the system's solemn voice resounded in Bufang's mind. The host can set up a stall in the square, and the income from the stall will be counted as turnover. Sure enough, Bufang's eyes lit up. With so many people in the square, it was definitely a huge resource, just like an undeveloped square. As for setting up a stall, what kind of stall would he set up and what would he sell? Bufang needed to think carefully. Mo Yen and the others couldn't help but roll their eyes when they saw Bufang lost in thought. The great demon really wants to open a shop in the square? That's awesome. Zhu Yen was a little speechless about Bufang's idea. Realm Lord Dit asked us to take part in the competition, not to open a shop, but he couldn't say anything to Bufang now. He turned his head and walked into the distance. Over there, in an arena, lots were being drawn. It was the drawing of lots for the team competition. There was no need to draw lots for the individual competition, but someone had to be sent to collect the tag. This tag represented the identity of the contestant. Bufang asked Zhu Yen to do all this. Looking at Zhu Yan's back as he left, Bufang came to his senses. With his hands behind his back, he rubbed his chin and narrowed his eyes. Yu followed beside Bufang. Yuqi glanced at Bufang and pursed her lips. Do as you see fit. Don't go overboard. I'm going to get busy. Alright, keep a low profile here. You're still too weak. If I hadn't arrived today, do you think you could have escaped unscathed? Yuqi looked at Bufang and said. Yuqi was not very clear about Bufang's cultivation, but the last time she saw Bufang, Bufang was still pitifully weak. Not much time had passed since then, so he shouldn't have become much stronger. This kid's culinary skills are okay, but his cultivation is weak, Yuqi said. Bufang nodded. Then, with the heavy sword on her back, she walked into the distance and soon disappeared into the crowd. Are you really going to open a shop? Xianyuan Shehui asked, looking at Bufang. There are so many people and such a big market. It would be a waste not to open a shop, Bufang said. Hot pot? Food stalls? Xianyuan Shehui knew that Bufang was very experienced with this kind of stall. When Bufang first entered the Heaven Chief realm, he opened a stall in front of Heaven Chief Hall. Hot pot. Bufang glanced at Xianyuan Shehui and shook his head. Hot pot is not suitable for this kind of place. There are so many people, and most of them are preparing to take part in the competition, so we can't open stalls with fixed spots. They don't have time to eat slowly. It's best to open stalls that sell takeout dishes, Bufang said. Xianyuan Shehui froze. Takeout dishes? What is Bufang going to cook this time? Fang Yu and Mo Yen were speechless when they saw Xianyuan Shehui and Bufang chatting excitedly. Xianyuan Shehui was a commoner, and it was said that the great demon was also a commoner. Sure enough, only commoners would think of opening a stall. It's beneath me. Mo Yen and Fang Yu looked at each other and shook their heads in disappointment. Bufang and Xianyuan Shehui discussed for a while. Xianyuan Shehui was dumbfounded. He was dumbfounded by the large number of nouns that Bufang had just uttered. Then, let's do it. Xianyuan Shehui hesitated for a moment and said, I believe you, Owner Bu. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He nodded. Follow me. Bufang said to Xianyuan Shehui. After saying that, Bufang walked toward the crowd. He was inspecting the location. He needed to find a place with a large flow of people and a place where everyone could meet. In the square, it was not difficult to find such a place. Bufang quickly found the place and set it there. Wait for me here. I'm going to prepare something, Bufang said to Xianyuan Shehui. Xianyuan Shehui was stunned. A moment later, she found that Bufang had disappeared. With a thought, Bufang entered the Heaven and Earth farmland. Inside the Heaven and Earth farmland, Cici and the others were discussing fiercely. They were studying a new dish. The appearance of Bufang stopped their discussion. Don't worry. You guys continue. I'm just passing by, Bufang said. After saying that, Bufang walked toward the wooden house and called Nyo Han-san. He asked Nyo Han-san to find some wood. Bufang set up a wooden stall at the same spot and even added a cloth banner on top of the stall. Owner Bu, what are you going to do? Niu Hansan stared at Bufang with a dumbfounded face. "Oh, I'm going to make a little thing," Bufang said. Then, he took the wooden stall and left the heaven and earth farmland. Before leaving, he also took a lot of ingredient. Xianyuan Shehui stood in the center of the crowd, feeling a little embarrassed. People kept looking at him, which made his body slightly shiver. He suddenly felt that Owner Bu's idea was not feasible. How uncomfortable it was to stand in such a position and receive so many gazes. How could he still be in the mood to cook? Buzz, a wave of fluctuation spread. Bufang appeared with a huge wooden stall. Xianyuan Shehui looked at Bufang in disbelief. The latter smashed the wooden stall on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. The crowd was startled, and many of them retreated, revealing a huge empty space. Many people in the surroundings turned their gazes over. Some were dissatisfied, some were annoyed, and some were impatient. After all, in such a crowded place, it was normal for people to be annoyed if you put a thing in the way. Bufang's face was normal. With a thought, the black turtle constellation wok emerged. With a bang, it was placed on the wooden shelf. Many people around made a sound of surprise, wondering what Bufang was going to do. In the distance, Mo Yen and Fang Yu looked at him, feeling extremely embarrassed. This, the great demon. Was he really going to open a stall here? What kind of stall was he going to set up? Swish, as the banner fluttered, many people's eyes were attracted to it. Bufang's face was expressionless, and the words on the banner were exposed. Fang's little stall? Are you kidding me? Is he going to set up a stall in the Forbidden Soul Square? He's very business-minded, but his behavior is stupid. The people around them were all whispering. Everyone present was here to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, so it was impossible for them to have free time to eat at a stall. It was a waste of time to set up such a stall. Hearing the questioning voices around her, Xianyuan Shehui couldn't help but put on a calm face. However, Bufang was very calm. Looking at Bufang's calm face, Xianyuan Shehui also felt much calmer. Bufang's expression didn't change. After calming down, the dragon bone kitchen knife fell into his hand. A wooden stick appeared in his hand. The wooden stick flew into the air. A meteor-like knife technique was immediately displayed. Rays of blade light seemed to fall from the starry sky. In the blink of an eye, the wooden branches were shaved into slender wooden branches. Swish! Bufang dealt with the wooden sticks and placed them on the wooden stall. Before the competition began, many people around them crossed their arms in front of their chests and stopped to watch Bufang's performance. Yes, it was a performance. In their eyes, Bufang was like a clown. Many people recognized Bufang and Xianyuan Shehui. They were the chefs from the Heaven Chief realm. Sure enough, chefs were still chefs. They couldn't change their cooking habits. Even though they were here for the competition, they still planned to cook. Bufang glanced around, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up when he saw those playful gazes. Very good, swish. All of a sudden, a giant octopus appeared in Bufang's hand. Bufang grabbed the octopus with one hand. The giant octopus curled up and seemed to be wiggling. His mind flickered. Instantly, the dragon bone kitchen knife turned into a shooting star, smashing down. The octopus was instantly cut into pieces. His mind flickered and he clenched his fingers, flicking them. Instantly, the wooden sticks on the shelf shot up into the sky. Those octopus tentacles flew up, tap, tap, tap. Then, the wrapped octopus tentacles fell on the wooden stall. The black turtle constellation wok was originally dented. However, as it was a god of cooking set, it naturally had its own magical properties. Under the control of Bufang's mind, the black turtle constellation wok slowly protruded, turning into a flat surface. Xianyuan Shehui was dumbfounded. What was Owner Bu going to do? Owner Bu, what are you going to do? Xianyuan Shehui was bewildered. Oh, hang up the banner. Bufang glanced at Xianyuan Shehui. Then, he seemed to remember something. He threw a banner to Xianyuan Shehui while he continued to work. Xianyuan Shehui suppressed the curiosity in his heart. Carrying the banner, he walked to the side of the wooden stall and set up the banner. Swish, the banner rolled down. Soon, the words and content on it were reflected in people's eyes. The gazes of many people in the surroundings were attracted. Fong Fong Little Stall, first day's dish, teppanyaki. Recipe: teppanyaki octopus tentacles, teppanyaki squid, teppanyaki dragon liver, teppanyaki dragon claw, teppanyaki demon doll meat, teppanyaki dragon tail. Price: 10 immortal crystals, nether crystals, per skewer. Good quality and low price. First come, first serve. Big sale on the first day of business. The first 10 customers will enjoy a 1% discount. The information on the banner was huge. Many people were bewildered. Even Xianyuan Shehui, who was hanging the banner, was bewildered. Then, he sucked in a breath of cold air. Teppanyaki? What's that? Xianyuan Shehui was totally confused. He knew about hot pot. He had seen Owner Boo's hot pot cooking. His creativity shocked everyone. Not only hot pot but also barbecue. When he saw the wooden skewers, he thought Owner Boo wanted to barbecue. But now it seemed that was not the case. Besides, first day's dish? Was there going to be a second day's dish? When the people around saw the banner, they also burst into an uproar. Disdainful laughter rose one after another. Many people were even laughing at him. 10 immortal crystals per skewer. Why didn't this guy just rob a bank? Although the people present were all monstrous geniuses from different realms, and some were even the leaders of their respective teams, they were not short of money. However, money didn't grow on trees. A small skewer cost 10 immortal crystals. Did he really think they were fools? Many people had made up their minds that they would not buy Bufang's dishes anymore. They wanted to make this chef from the Heaven Chief realm cry. In the crowd, Yuqi also saw Bufang's behavior. The corners of her mouth twitched. This guy was really stirring up trouble. Yu stood quietly behind Bufang, her eyes bright, as if she was looking forward to the teppanyaki Bufang mentioned. Yu had been with Bufang for the longest time. She knew very well that every time Bufang took out a new dish, he would not let them down. Teppanyaki seemed to be delicious. Bufang didn't care about the mocking and disdainful voices around him. If they hadn't eaten it, how would they know the charm of teppanyaki? A skewer of squid was as cool as an immortal. When the ingredients were ready, Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. He took a step back. His mind flickered. A mass of white flame shot out from his mouth. Sizzle, on the black tortoise iron plate steam rose. At this moment, the drawing of lots in the arena had officially begun. Chapter 12:37. In everyone's eyes. This new stall in the square was like a joke. Teppanyaki, this strange name, basically no one had heard of it. Who would want to make quick money with this kind of dish that came out of nowhere? If you want to make money and satisfy people's appetite, you should at least choose some famous dishes, like the roasted Tyrannosaurus thigh of the Vajra region, or the Pudu vegetarian rice of the West Little Buddhist sect, or even the wine of the abyss, or the blood river fish of hell. At least this kind of food could attract people. Teppanyaki. They had never heard of it. It was precisely because they had never heard of it that it became a joke in everyone's eyes. It was especially so for the banner that Bufang had hung up. The words on the banner made the mocking voices even more intense. How could anyone be stupid enough to buy a string of 10 immortal crystals? Besides, now that the competition was about to start, who would have the leisure to eat this thing? Mo Yen and Fong Yu, watching from a distance, couldn't help but hold their foreheads, feeling helpless. The great demon had really fallen. The legendary great demon was really nothing more than this. Why would the Realm Lord send such a person to participate in such an important competition? Wasn't this a joke? This was totally a plan to make the Heaven Chief realm a laughingstock in the surrounding world. But Bufang didn't seem to care about the eyes of the people around him at all. Instead, he concentrated on his cooking. Teppanyaki. This was a kind of food from small stalls. Of course, there were also high-end shops that specialized in cooking teppanyaki. However, in the final analysis, teppanyaki still had the atmosphere of a small stall. A large group of people surrounded an iron plate, watching the chef work on it, and all kinds of rich aroma and heat escaped from it. The oil was splashing, and the ingredients were shaking. That kind of feeling was very unforgettable. Teppanyaki was actually a kind of food with a lot of smoke and fire. In fact, the food from some high-end restaurants was also very good, but compared with the food from small stalls, it always lacked a bit of smoke and fire. The feeling of superiority would make the food lose some of its taste. On the contrary, the food from small stalls on the street could make people involuntarily immersed and unable to extricate themselves. This was the charm of different kinds of food. Sizzle under the control of Bufang, the black turtle constellation wok turned into the black turtle iron plate. Along with the heat of the flame, the temperature of the steel plate continued to rise. The scorching heat spread out, causing the temperature of the black tortoise steel plate to increase. Faint smoke filled the air. Bufang glanced at the people around him. When he saw the disdainful gazes, the corners of his mouth twitched. She rolled up the sleeves of her vermilion robe, revealing her fair arms. Bufang grabbed a small plate placed on the wooden stall. He grabbed the plate and gently threw it out. Immediately, the oil splashed out and splashed on the iron plate. A flat spatula was held by Bufang. It continuously rubbed against the black tortoise steel plate, causing the oil to spread across the surface. Very quickly, the scalding oil began to evaporate as an oil fragrance filled the air. He grabbed 3 strands of octopus tentacles. He placed the 3 strands of octopus tentacles on the black tortoise steel plate. As soon as they were placed on the plate, they began to boil, and the sizzling sound echoed unceasingly. Under the effect of the oil, the octopus fat emitted a thick fragrance. At first, the smell wasn't obvious, and the aroma wasn't as strong as expected. Seeing that Bufang could actually start cooking under so many disdainful gazes, many people were a little surprised. They stared at Bufang. Many of them were a little curious. And Bufang's movements were very skillful. The 3 strands of octopus tentacles were placed on the iron plate. Under the effect of the oil, they sizzled. Juices and water oozed out of it. In an instant, the water began to boil like bursting bubbles. What? The eyes of Xianyuan Shehui, who was the closest, instantly brightened. She took a deep breath. Very fragrant. Very fragrant. The ingredient had just been placed on the plate, and such a thick fragrance had already spread out. Owner Bu had indeed made a new move. The flat spatula was held in Bufang's hand. Bufang straightened his back, not stopping his movements. He used the spatula to press the octopus tentacles, making the liquid seep out more. The more the liquid seeped out, the stronger the fragrance. Bufang held 3 strands of octopus tentacles in one hand. When the fragrance drifted out, the color of the octopus tentacles also changed. Bufang, on the other hand, turned the octopus tentacle over. On the other side of the iron plate, the sizzling sound rang out. The milky white liquid seeped out as if it was about to explode. Bufang looked at the flipped side. That side had turned pink, which seemed to arouse his appetite. But it was just the beginning. Although teppanyaki didn't seem to require any skills, the control of the fire and the details were very delicate. There was no room for mistakes. Xianyuan Shehui stared at it. She suddenly felt that the food that Owner Bu had made this time might not be ordinary. Perhaps it wouldn't be as phenomenal as the hot pot, but at least it was easy to make this competition boil. Sizzle. Both sides of the octopus tentacles had turned pink. Because of the rising steam, the tentacles seemed to be trembling slowly. And at this time, the fragrance was already very strong. It was the original fragrance of the ingredient, the fragrance slowly drifted out, causing the faces of the people who had been watching the stall to change. So fragrant. This smell is a little tempting. Gulp. Why do I feel like I can't control my emotions? What a strange smell. It seems to be unexpectedly fragrant. The surrounding people all stared at Bufang's stall. The disdain in their eyes slowly disappeared. Perhaps they were tempted by the fragrance, but they couldn't help but put away their disdain. They took a deep breath. Instantly, the fragrance was like a small snake drilling into their mouths and noses. Sizzle! 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 All of a sudden, Bufang's movements increased. The 3 skewers suddenly swung over, patting on the black tortoise iron plate. Moreover, the flat spatula was constantly pressing the octopus tentacles. Every time it was pressed, the sizzling sound would dim a little. However, as soon as he let go, the fragrance instantly surged. Boom! Bufang's movements didn't stop. His face didn't change. He grabbed a small long tube bottle placed at the side of the wooden stall. His thumb pressed on the opening of the long tube bottle. Gulp! Bufang clasped one hand, taking a step back. The hand that was holding the long tube suddenly swung. Instantly, the liquid in the bottle shot out with a sizzling sound. It sprinkled on the octopus tentacles. Sizzle! Sizzle! In an instant, misty steam rose. The people who had been staring at Bufang's movements instantly burst into an uproar. Apparently, they were shocked by the burst of steam. Of course, most of them were attracted by the fragrance of wine and meat in the air. The wine fragrance was mellow and the meat fragrance was rich. When they blended together, it seemed like 2 kinds of unique silk threads were entwined together. Bufang narrowed his eyes, his heart suddenly surging with excitement. His mind flickered. A chilly strip instantly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Half squinting his eyes, Bufang bent his finger and flicked. A drop of golden oil instantly soared up into the sky. The oil drop was perfectly round, floating above the black tortoise iron plate. At this moment, everyone's eyes were attracted by that perfectly round drop of golden oil. Everyone widened their eyes in disbelief. In the next instant, Bufang suddenly flicked his finger. That golden oil drop instantly whistled down. Breaking through the rising smoke, it ruthlessly smashed on the iron plate. Suddenly, it splashed and shattered, and the oil spilled on it. Boom! It was like a small explosion. Flames suddenly surged, like a dragon leaping up. An uproar suddenly broke out. So cool! So beautiful! It looks so good! I can't believe the aroma of wine and meat are so perfectly combined. My appetite has been whetted. The surrounding people were shocked and spoke in amazement. As Bufang moved, the aroma wafted in the air, attracting many people. The aroma was so tempting that many people turned their heads and looked over. Zhu Yan walked out of the arena in a daze. His face was pale. The result of the draw had made him feel a little desperate. As the captain, he was responsible for drawing lots for the team competition. There were a total of more than 30 small worlds participating in the team competition. Some of these small worlds were strong, while others were weak. Of course, he hoped to draw a weak world. If he drew a powerful world like the Vajra region, Winged Man Valley, or West Little Buddhist sect, it would definitely be a nightmare. However, he did not end up in the Vajra realm, but the world that he drew was not a weak world. The Blackwind continent. It was a continent near the abyss. There were 5 contestants, 3 of whom were half-step saints and 2 9-star true immortals. It was definitely a nightmare for the Heaven Chief realm. They were basically all 6-star true immortals. Why were all the contestants in this competition so strong? Zhu Yan felt a little desperate. He thought that he could show his strength in this Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path with great confidence. However, in the first team competition, he had drawn such powerful existences. This made him feel a little depressed. He had let down Realm Lord Dit and City Lord Mingqi. He walked back like a puppet, holding the number tag and the jade token for the team competition in his hand. He clenched them tightly. Suddenly, a fragrance wafted into his nose. Zhu Yan paused. His pupils constricted. The next moment, he raised his head and looked into the distance. There, layers and layers of people gathered around them. Zhu Yan slipped into the crowd. Zhu Yan immediately saw Bufang, who was setting up a stall. Once again, he fell silent. How could he set up a stall during the competition? What was the point of this competition? The great demon was also unreliable. This time there was really no hope. On the other side, Mo Yen and Fang Yu stared at Bufang eagerly, their eyes flashing with bright gleams. More and more people came back from the draw, and they all gathered around. They were all shocked by the fragrance of the stall. Bufang's eyes were sharp. With a spicy strip dangling from the corner of his mouth, he waved his hand. Immediately, a round jar spun in his hand. Drops of spices drifted out and sprinkled on the octopus tentacles, making them look inexplicably attractive. They glistened with oil, and the oil splashed. The fragrance was tempting. The teppanyaki octopus is ready. Bufang put down the flat spatula, grabbed 3 skewers of octopus tentacles, and said faintly. His voice was not loud, but it rang out in all directions. It brought the people, who were immersed in his cooking process, back to their senses. Here, try it first. Bufang handed an octopus tentacle to you. You couldn't wait to take it. She opened her small pink mouth and bit on the hot octopus tentacle. Her small mouth seemed to be unable to hold it, and the octopus tentacle's tail was swaying. As soon as it entered her mouth, the aroma exploded in her mouth, like an aroma bomb bombarding the oral wall. Yu's eyes widened and her mouth bulged. The corners of her mouth were stained with sauce, munch, Nethery chewed unceasingly, and her face became red. It was delicious. Yu was amazed. There are 2 more skewers left. The first 10 customers will enjoy a 1% discount. In other words, 1 skewer will only cost 1 immortal crystal. Bufang said. He glanced at the crowd of people in front of the stall. Would anyone buy it? Many people were watching her eat, and they were all swallowing their saliva. They swallowed their saliva, but they still stopped. If no one bought it, they wouldn't buy it. However, they soon realized that they were wrong. Give me a skewer. It's so king fragrant. I'm dying of cravings. As soon as Bufang's voice rang out, an impatient voice rang out from the crowd. Then, a young monk in a yellow Buddhist robe stepped out of the crowd. Saliva dripped from the corners of his mouth as he stared at the skewer of octopus tentacles in Bufang's hand. Wow. He's a monk from the West Little Buddhism realm. Can monks eat meat too? Do octopus tentacles count as meat? I guess so. The appearance of the little monk caused an uproar among the crowd. After paying the immortal crystals, the little monk took the octopus tentacle from Bufang and impatiently stuffed it into his mouth. His mouth was covered with oil, and the corners of his mouth were stained with sauce. An uproar broke out. The crowd was pushed aside. A few monks in yellow Buddhist robes squeezed in. When they saw the little monk eating octopus tentacles, they were speechless. Junior brother Fa Shang, stop eating. It's our turn for the team competition. Senior brother Fa Wu, have a taste. It's delicious. The little monk's eyes were bright. With sauce on the corners of his mouth, he handed the remaining octopus tentacles to the monks who had squeezed through the crowd. Okay. Let's go to the competition after eating, okay? After all, this is the first show of our West Little Buddhism realm. We can't embarrass ourselves. Senior brother Fa Wu said helplessly. He could only dote on this little junior brother of his. When he saw the steaming octopus tentacle that Fa Shang handed him, his nose twitched. He opened his mouth and ate a piece of octopus tentacle. Damn it! It feels so good. Boss, give me another skewer. Oh no, 10 more. Chapter 1238. The East Island Realm was lucky enough to defeat the West Little Buddhism Realm? Many people in the square were in an uproar. They curiously looked at their own figures on the light screen, and some even waved their hands excitedly. Looking indifferently at the charging East Island Realm experts, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The little monk Fa Shang, who was the first to arrive, put his palms together and said to the people around him, "Buddha said that octopus tentacles are not meat." For a moment, the others forgot to tell the West Little Buddhism Realm's monk about the competition. Then, puff! The cultivation bases of the prison generals were slightly lower, ranging from 9-star true immortals to half-step saints. In the crowd, now, please enter the arena for the first team match. The West Little Buddhism Realm versus the East Island Realm. The visual impact of 10 skewers of octopus tentacles was very strong. The referee in charge of the match was a commander. A monk, his body glowing with a dazzling golden light, put on a bright red kasaya, and floated up from the crowd. The experts of the East Island Realm roared. "The screen is here." Puff, did he really have to give up? Stinky bald donkey. Fight. It was the first time that the immortal chefs of the immortal cooking realm had encountered such a novel thing. Everyone was very curious. They moved their chairs, sat in front of the light screen, and circled around it to watch the scene. Bufang said. A blast of air rose. The golden light faded away. "This monk eats meat? And he even brought meat to the arena?" The West Little Buddhism Realm was the first contestant of today's team match. The people around them were dumbfounded when they heard their senior monk eat a mouthful of octopus tentacles and shout, "10 more skewers." As the array fell, one figure after another appeared on the light screen. Commander Mo Yuan suddenly frowned. "Impossible. This doesn't fit the West Little Buddhism Realm's concept. Although the East Island Realm is strong, they shouldn't be afraid of it at all." Fa Wu flicked his finger. Immediately, the slender branch that Bufang had cut was covered with a layer of golden light. "Buzz, this must be great. I can eat delicious food without delaying the match. Perfect." Fa Wu grinned. The head of the small monk beside him also grinned foolishly and nodded repeatedly. The Heaven Chief Realms, Heaven Chief Realms, Heaven Chief Realm. Everyone was hugging their delicacies and looking at the screen happily. The surroundings of the arena had long since been surrounded by groups of people. 10 strings of octopus tentacles fell into his hands. Even the scene of the arena was projected perfectly on the screen. Slurp slurp. It was extremely comfortable. The most important point was, many people around them couldn't help but smack their lips. "Amitba, I'm going to be late for the match. My sins, my sins." Don't say that octopus tentacles are not meat. Golden light instantly blossomed. Senior Marshal Brother Fa Wu greedily took a deep breath. Immediately, the fragrance drilled into their mouths and noses, making them feel as if flowers were blooming in their hearts. A fragrant aroma wafted over. The oil splashed onto the black tortoise iron plate, and immediately, hot steam rose up, bursting out of it. Commander Mo Yuan said. His voice echoed for a long time. The entire square was in an uproar. "Just a string of octopus tentacles captured you? Benefactor, the octopus tentacles you made are delicious." As if meeting Bufang's eyes, Senior Marshal Brother Fa Wu raised his hand, put his palms together, and bowed solemnly. After all, it was a top-grade projection array that Earth Prison had specially prepared for the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. The next moment, his aura skyrocketed. Sizzle, slowly landing on the ground, the dazzling red kasaya on his body turned and walked down the arena. Fa Wu, on the other hand, took his time. They were all the top experts of the West Little Buddhism Realm. Fa Wu put his palms together, nodded slightly, and licked the corner of his mouth. In the blink of an eye, sizzling steam billowed out of the arena. Senior Marshal Brother Fa Wu's eyes lit up. "I can take it away." For the East Island Realm, this was simply bad luck. Among them, there was a precious long-distance projection array. It looked like it was delicious. Everyone's eyes went wide, and they couldn't help but feel deeply embarrassed. The array was very precious, for it could project images of Earth prison onto the light screen. Commander Mo Yuan's face was cold, and he was clad in a dark red robe. His hair was grayish-white, but he exuded a murderous aura. Fa Wu said with a kind look on his face. This chef was cooking 10 skewers of octopus tentacles at the same time. The experts of the East Island realm roared. Wine and meat go through the intestines, but Buddha stays in the heart. Benefactor, calm down. One of the Buddhas seemed somewhat dissatisfied. He took a step forward, and like a dragon, he charged toward Fa Wu, who was sitting cross-legged in midair and eating teppanyaki octopus skewers. Huge Buddhas with golden bodies stared at the light screen with deep eyes. There seemed to be chanting Buddhist hymns and flying dragons and phoenixes. They took the 10 skewers of steaming octopus tentacles from Bu Fong with smiles on their faces, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Moreover, the following scene made them feel extremely amazed. A loud uproar came from the crowd. When he threw out a punch, the wind and clouds kicked up, and dust rose into the sky. The commanders were basically either First Revolution Little Saint or Second Revolution Little Saint. Although the West Little Buddhism realm was a world of monks, these monks were not to be trifled with. Their overall strength was not inferior to nether prisons. Rip. The East Island realm expert threw out a punch and collided with the branches. In the square of Heaven Chief Hall, the experts of the East Island realm had already begun to laugh excitedly. Did the West Little Buddhism realm choose to give up the first round? The people around them were speechless. He rolled his tongue and swallowed the last octopus tentacle. As for the Earth prison overlords, they were stronger. The man who asked the question almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. His eyes swept across the entire place, taking in everyone's gazes. With a thought, he wriggled. Oil seeped out of the corners of his mouth. Then, he smacked his lips. One branch after another shot down from the sky. Suddenly, the flowers trembled and rumbled like thunder. All the novice monks stared at the light screen with puzzled and indignant faces. On the screen, Commander Mo Yuan was shouting the name of the West Little Buddhism realm over and over again. As the captain, he was responsible for being the first to fight. It was an extraordinary scene. Although Bu Fong's stall kept giving off a fragrant aroma, it could not attract the attention of all the people in the square. The monks of the West Little Buddhism realm couldn't help but take a deep breath and immerse themselves in the aroma, unable to extricate themselves. One by one, they plunged into the East Island realm expert's body, rendering him unable to move. When they walked out of the arena in the future, they could stand tall and say that they, the East Island realm, had also defeated the West Little Buddhism realm. In the arena, however, puff! The sound of chewing rang clearly in everyone's ears at this moment. It sounded like the roar of a divine dragon, and a golden light towered into the sky. Where are the contestants from the West Little Buddhism realm? Nether Prison was obviously very concerned about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, so it had prepared all kinds of tricks. Amitba, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Didn't they say they were going to fight for the glory of the West Little Buddhism realm? There will be a team competition in this year's Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. The rules of the team competition are different from those of the individual competition. There will be 5 contestants in each team competition, and they can fight 5 times. The team that wins 3 matches will qualify for the next round, and the team will advance to the next round. After all, Nether Prison had the ambition to melt the surrounding world and turn it into the great Netherworld. Rumble. Of course, still, no one entered the arena. Buzz, of course, as a chef's paradise, how could they miss food while watching the light screen? The battle was about to begin. If they hadn't seen the skewer of octopus tentacles dripping with golden juice in the monk's hand, they might have been fooled by Fa Wu's avatar. Bu Fong's face was indifferent. Since they were his customers, he would cook for them. His kind face made him look like a Buddha who had descended to the world. After so long, the contestants still hadn't entered the arena, which was a provocation to him. They spread out in front of the group of monks, standing in front of the stall. The West Little Buddhism realm has gone too far. Are they food? Are they looking down on the East Island realm? In the center of the square was a group of people standing around a waterside pavilion. The ends of the wooden branches were swaying in the Heaven Chief realm. He pinched a flower with his fingers and flicked his fingers. A monk? He grabbed an octopus tentacle, stuffed it into his mouth, and chewed. The aura of a demon ape gradually spread out of him, making the surrounding experts who were watching the competition feel refreshed. What a great honor it would be if word got out. The square was very large. The captain's cultivation base was very good. He was a one-revolution little saint, and his strength was very strong. Didn't he say he was going to participate in the competition? Could there be such a good thing? Their competition had attracted the attention of countless people. Above the prison overlords was Hades. 10 skewers. A ripple from the array formation spread out and projected onto the arena. A ripping sound rang out. Rays of dazzling golden light blossomed in all directions. Oil spilled and sparks sputtered. There seemed to be flames swimming on the iron plate. The experts from the East Island realm were so happy that their faces were almost blooming. Junior brother Fa Shang also stared blankly at his senior brother. Sure enough, this octopus tentacle is delicious. He slowly walked onto the stage, holding the octopus skewers in his hand. The faces of the monks, who were looking at the octopus tentacles enviously in his hand, changed. Then they shot out. Bu Fong threw the 10 skewers onto the black tortoise iron plate. They didn't expect to win the first team competition like this. It was a good start. The light screen was constructed from several talisman stones and formed into a mysterious formation. The formation was constantly emitting rays of light, one after another, forming the light screen. Fa Wu's expression remained unchanged. He was still floating in midair with a kind face. These octopus tentacles were definitely not ordinary. The prison overlords, who were watching the competition from a distance, also frowned. They wanted to taste it too. It was a huge screen of light that was projected onto it. Amitbao, the taste is perfect, but a little spicy. Meanwhile, in the West Little Buddhism realm, monk, doesn't your realm have the most precepts? Aren't you afraid of breaking the precepts? If the contestants from the West Little Buddhism realm don't come onto the stage, they'll be judged as forfeiting. Bu Fong raised his head in surprise, glanced at Fa Wu, and raised his eyebrows. After a while, as their breathing quickened, the scene on the screen suddenly changed. Fragrance, smoke, and heat enveloped the whole square. The experts from the East Island realm widened their eyes and opened their mouths, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, the experts from the East Island realm were already furious. However, he didn't relax at all. Commander Mo Yuan gave Fa Wu a cold look. When he saw the octopus tentacles in the latter's hand, his eyes narrowed. Therefore, the business of the surrounding stalls was booming. Because of this, the people in the Heaven Chief realm could watch the competition in Earth Prison as soon as possible. The experts from the East Island realm roared. Suddenly, at this moment, their captain was annoyed with his bad luck. As soon as he finished speaking, he paid the immortal crystals to Bu Fong. City Lord Mingqi, Zhou Lords, and City Lord Gongshu Baiguang were all sitting in chairs in front of the light screen. With their noble status, they naturally enjoyed the best view. So many people. Are these all contestants from different realms? In the square, therefore, more people were paying attention to the team competition in the arena. However, he was powerlessly pierced by the wooden branch, and his entire body was nailed to the arena alive. A thunderclap rang out in his head. Obviously, many people didn't understand why the West Little Buddhism realm was late. Senior brother Fa Wu grabbed 10 skewers of octopus tentacles, lifted his monk robe, and rushed toward the arena. At first, they were hesitant, but when they saw the monks order crazily after eating a skewer, they understood. His voice was a little hoarse, and it spread throughout the square. Not far from the center of the square, light curtains appeared one after another. These light curtains were projected by the formation. An uproar broke out in the crowd. Behind the heads of these Buddhas, green light discs emerged. The aroma wafted into their nostrils, and it smelled very good. Many heaven chief realms had gathered here. In the square, all kinds of stalls bloomed like flowers, decorating the crowd. In front of the West Little Buddhist Pagoda, Earth Prison had a strict hierarchy. From the lowest to the highest, they were Prison General, Commander, and Prison Overlord. In front of Fong Fong's little stall, however, they were unlucky. They had drawn the West Little Buddhism realm for the first round. Senior brother Fa Wu. Don't be like this. Now that Fa Wu was holding the octopus tentacles, he looked a little funny. So this is Earth Prison. It seems to be very vast. Not only the monks but the people around them were also in an uproar, drooling. The first team match had finally begun. They had picked up a small world that could make it to the top 3 in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? How arrogant! Suddenly there was a stalemate. Your team match is coming up soon. Even if the owner makes the octopus tentacles, you can't eat them. Someone couldn't help but ask when he saw the group of monks who were almost drooling. How could monks eat meat? Okay, if it's delicious, you should eat more. My stall has teppanyaki, and you can take it out. There was a strong aroma of meat in the hot air, which was extremely tempting. The scene was very cool. Another branch shot out. Commander Mo Yuan said coldly. The East Island realm was considered a good small world among the small worlds around the Netherworld, and it was guarded by the great sage. However, no one responded. How could a Buddha lord say such nonsense? Why don't you go to heaven? Commander Mo Yuan said. In the West Little Buddhism realm, many people around were speechless. Chapter 1239. The battle ended as quickly as it started. A few twigs shot down, and the East Island expert was instantly nailed to the ground by Fa Wu. Of course, Fa Wu didn't kill anyone. He just nailed the East Island expert to the arena. The ends of the twigs swayed slowly. The faces of the East Island experts were ashen. They didn't expect the battle to end so quickly. Many experts behind the light screens widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. The leader of the East Island realm was a little saint expert, but he was defeated so easily. Although the earlier battle seemed to have happened in the blink of an eye, in reality, the confrontation within it was very profound. Whether it was the confrontation of momentum, strength, or mental force, it was a very dangerous situation. Of course, in the end, Fa Wu defeated the East Island leader's momentum, overpowered his strength, and crushed his mental force. That was why the little saint was nailed to the ground. Although it was not a life-and-death battle, the result was cruel. The East Island leader's eyes were dull, and he seemed to have lost his soul. The first victory came so naturally, and he even won while eating octopus skewers. This kind of leisurely and contented state made the experts of the East Island realm feel helpless. After all, the West Little Buddhism realm is indeed powerful. After the first match, there was a break of about 10 minutes, during which the winning team could choose to let the winning contestant continue to guard the arena or send a new contestant. No matter what, as long as they won 3 matches, they would win the team competition. Fa Wu initially wanted to let his junior brothers experience the atmosphere of the competition, but when he turned around, he realized that none of his junior brothers were around. The corner of Fa Wu's mouth twitched, and he touched his bald head. He didn't need to think to know that his junior brothers should be around the stall. For the sake of food, they really don't care about the competition. Fa Wu sighed helplessly. In the end, he could only continue to stand in the arena. However, to him, this was not a difficult task. With his strength, he could easily defeat the whole East Island realm. Therefore, the battle was one-sided. Fa Wu swept across the audience without any hesitation. His relaxed look made the entire East Island realm feel extremely frustrated. It was their bad luck to run into the West Little Buddhism realm. There was no doubt about the outcome. They didn't have any hope in the team competition. They had lost so badly that they didn't even have a chance to advance. They could only place their hopes on individual battles. Only a personal battle could help them regain face for the East Island realm and show the strength of the East Island realm. If they hadn't met the West Little Buddhism realm, they would have gone further in the team competition. In front of the stall, long lines were lined up. Bufang held a chili strip in his mouth. He squinted his eyes and cooked skillfully. His movements were extremely skillful. In the surroundings, many people were holding skewers of steaming hot and fragrant octopus tentacles in their hands. Their faces were brimming with happiness. Sizzle. Oil splattered everywhere as the octopus tentacles were sucked into their mouth. The chewy and elastic texture caused their eyes to widen in shock. It was so delicious that it made people enjoy it so much that they forgot to leave. After finishing a skewer, the people went back to the back of the line. Xianyuan Shehui swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His face was full of disbelief. He turned his head to look at Bufang, who was extremely calm, and his heart was filled with stormy waves. The great demon was still the great demon. Everything was under his control. He had once again created a miracle. In this foreign country, the great demon had conquered everyone with the charm of delicious food, of course. Most importantly, as he watched the immortal crystals go into his bag, Xianyuan Xiaohui was a little dumbfounded. Each skewer cost 10 immortal crystals. Owner Bu cooked at least 10 skewers at a time, and sometimes he cooked 30 skewers at a time. That was 300 immortal crystals in one go. He had thought that a small stall could make a lot of profit, but now it seemed that he was wrong, very wrong. The profit of the stall was beyond his imagination. What's more, only Owner Bu's stall was big here. Seeing the greasy mouths of the people around them, and their excited looks made Xianyuan Xiaohui breathe a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, it was right to believe in Owner Bu. Mo Yen and Fang Yu were already stunned and in a state of confusion. The development of things seemed to be completely beyond their expectations. I can't believe the great Demon King has really set up this stall and publicized the delicacies of the immortal cooking realm. Zhu Yan's eyes were full of disbelief, and he even looked a little funny. He couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that the great demon's business was booming and that the great demon's hands were tired from receiving so many immortal crystals. However, Zhu Yan's face quickly returned to normal, and he even looked a little desperate. What was the use of running a stall well? If they lost the competition, they could only go back home. It was not a big deal to go back to the Heaven Chief realm, but the main thing was that he would become a laughingstock and not be able to avenge the humiliation. Moreover, he had wanted to show the dignity of the Heaven Chief realm, but now he could only become a joke. How could he not feel sad? The next match is the team match. Heaven Chief Realm versus the Blackwind Continent. Commander Mo Yuan said in the arena. As soon as his voice faded away, the crowd below the arena, who had been watching the match, began to murmur and whisper to each other. The Heaven Chief Realm was a very famous world around. After all, it used to be no weaker than the Nether Prison. Of course, the Heaven Chief Realm had declined now, and it no longer lived up to its former reputation. But that didn't stop others from being curious about it. The Blackwind Continent was a continent around the abyss, and its strength was considered below average in this Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. For a real top world, the Blackwind Continent was pitifully weak. But for the Heaven Chief Realm, it was not weak at all. In fact, it could even be said to be a formidable enemy that was difficult to resist. The main reason was that DIT didn't send any real experts to take over the Heaven Chief realm this time. In the distance, Zhu Yan stood in front of the stall. Zhu Yan's face turned pale when he heard Commander Mo Yuan's words. Mo Yan and Fang Yu also heard Commander Mo Yuan's words and stared at Zhu Yan with widened eyes. "It's our turn." Mo Yan and Fang Yu suddenly became nervous. It was impossible for them not to be nervous since it was their first time participating in such a tournament. They were so shocked by the great demon's actions that they didn't have time to be nervous. Now that they had recovered from their shock, their bodies were trembling. "Tell the great demon. We'll go over first." Zhu Yan glanced at Bufang, who was busy cooking and collecting immortal crystals. A look of speechlessness flashed across his face. After saying that to Mo Yan, he walked toward the arena with Fang Yu. Mo Yan paused. It wasn't until Zhu Yan and Fang Yu left that she came to her senses. Then, she turned to look at Bufang. Looking at the great demon, who kept shouting to a group of people with a spicy strip dangling from his mouth, she suddenly felt a little scared. "What's wrong?" Xianyuan Shihui glanced at the hesitant Mo Yan and asked with a frown. "It's our turn for the team competition. Zhu Yan and Fang Yu have gone to compete. They asked me to inform the great demon," Mo Yan said. Xianyuan Shihui nodded. "Who are our opponents? How strong are they?" Xianyuan Shihui asked again. "The Blackwind continent has 3 half-step saints and 2 9-star true immortals," Mo Yan said. After that, she fell silent. Xianyuan Shihui nodded. The Blackwind continent's strength was enough to crush them. It seemed that the great demon would have to make a move. After all, it was a team competition, and the honor of the Heaven Chief realm was at stake. Xianyuan Shihui didn't dare to act recklessly. However, before she could open her mouth, Bufang continued to cook the octopus tentacles. The wine spilled, the flames rose, and the majestic sound kept ringing in people's ears. "Well, go and watch the competition. When the 2 of them lose, call me over. I'm busy now." With a spicy strip dangling from his mouth, Bufang said without turning his head. That gave Xianyuan Shihui pause, but she nodded quickly. Then, she took Mo Yan and ran toward the arena in the distance. Bufang looked at the back of the 2 of them with an indifferent expression. "Boss, give me 10 more skewers." Okay, when Zhu Yan stepped into the arena, the whole audience burst into laughter. It was because of Zhu Yan's swollen face. Because of the skillful use of force by the Vajra realm expert, the scars on Zhu Yan's face had not yet faded. Zhu Yan's face turned red because he had been holding back his anger. "Ha ha ha. Is this the Heaven Chief of the Heaven Chief realm? Does he look like a pig? Did he get beaten up before he even got on the stage? I heard that this is the leader of the Heaven Chief realm. The former Heaven Chief realm has really declined." The laughter of the people around rang out incessantly. "Ah, did you see that? I was the one who beat up that little worm. Wasn't it very skillful?" The Vajra realm expert laughed in the distance, and his laughter seemed to set off waves. It caused the people around him to burst into laughter. Zhu Yan's face turned green and red, and he glared at the Vajra realm expert. In the Heaven Chief realm in the square in front of the light screen, everyone was panting violently. None of them had expected that the contestant from the Heaven Chief realm would end up in such a miserable state as soon as he got on the stage. It seemed a little different from what they had imagined. The face of the Zhu family head was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. Naturally, he was furious that a disciple of his family had been humiliated like this. This was the humiliation of the Heaven Chief realm. Fight. Beat them up. Show the might of the Heaven Chief realm. Beat them to death. Damn it. Chop them with kitchen knives. The Heaven Chief realm's Heaven Chief realm experts were even more indignant, and their blood seemed to have been ignited. On the light screen, the curtains of the battle slowly unfolded. The Blackwind continent had underestimated its opponent. After all, Zhu Yan's strength was only at the 6-star true immortal realm, which was not interesting at all. Therefore, the Blackwind continent sent the weakest 9-star true immortal realm expert to participate. Even the weakest 9-star true immortal realm expert didn't take Zhu Yan seriously at all. The Heaven Chief realm was just SOSO. Outside the arena, Mo Yen and Fang Yu still had hope. Zhu Yan had a trump card. When they set off, the aristocratic families had given them good things. Since they had placed their hopes on him, he naturally had more good things. Buzz, sure enough, Zhu Yan's expression changed. As soon as he entered his fighting state, he became serious. Knife light flashed. An ice-blue kitchen knife suddenly appeared. The moment the kitchen knife appeared, the entire arena turned into an ice-cold ice field. It was extremely cold. A supreme-grade immortal tool. The 9-star true immortal realm expert from the Blackwind continent narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. He looked greedily at the kitchen knife in Zhu Yan's hand. The Heaven Chief realm was indeed the Heaven Chief realm. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. A supreme-grade immortal tool was extremely precious in the Blackwind continent, but no one had expected that a 6-star true immortal realm expert from the Heaven Chief realm could have it. However, this supreme-grade immortal tool would soon belong to him. A shrill cry rang out. The expert from the Blackwind continent made his move. His figure suddenly turned into a black shadow, and a terrible aura soared into the sky, rolling up thousands of wind waves. The entire arena began to tremble. Suddenly, a gust of black wind swept over. Zhu Yan's eyes focused. With a long roar, he waved the kitchen knife in his hand and slashed out thousands of knife lights, clashing with the black wind. A 9-star true immortal realm expert against a 6-star true immortal realm expert, even if the latter had a supreme-grade immortal tool. There was no suspense in the battle. A burst of cold laughter rang out. Zhu Yan's swollen head suffered a few more blows. Blood splattered everywhere. His entire body spun 360 degrees on the spot before crashing heavily onto the stage. Blood spurted out of his mouth and nose, and his aura was weak. Under the ring, the stimulation of blood caused the onlookers to scream in excitement. The Vajra realm expert sneered. Weak. Too weak. He couldn't even handle a mere Blackwind continent expert. The Blackwind continent expert walked over to Zhu Yan, who was lying on the ground. Zhu Yan struggled to get up. However, the 9-star true immortal realm expert kicked him in the back, causing him to lie flat on the ground. Blood spurted out of his mouth. You're as weak as a worm. Just lie there. The Blackwind continent expert sneered. He moved his foot sideways and tapped Zhu Yan's head, causing him to fall to the ground with a thud. The kitchen knife in his hand was also taken away by the Blackwind continent expert. Playing with the kitchen knife, the latter kicked Zhu Yan in the head. Suddenly, Zhu Yan was kicked out of the arena and sent flying. His aura was extremely weak. Xianyuan Shehui's face was bloodless, and she clenched her fists. No matter what, Zhu Yan was a member of the Heaven Chief realm. The fact that he was beaten like this was a disgrace to the Heaven Chief realm. Not to mention, perhaps the whole Heaven Chief realm had already seen this scene. Their weakness was undisguised in front of all the people in the immortal cooking realm. This was a kind of bloody torture to their hearts. I'll go. Fang Yu was already enraged. With a roar, he stamped his foot on the ground and rushed up. Xianyuan Shehui took a deep look at Fang Yu, who had stepped into the arena. He asked Mo Yen to take care of Zhu Yan, then turned and walked toward the stall in the distance. Xianyuan Shehui knew that he wouldn't be able to defeat the experts of the Blackwind continent in terms of defense, and neither would he. However, was there really no one in the Heaven Chief realm? No. There was still Owner Bu in the Heaven Chief realm, the great demon who could stir up a storm. Beat them. Owner Bu. Thinking of the scene of Zhu Yan being beaten, Xianyuan Shehui felt as if there was a flame burning in his heart. At this moment, his mood suddenly surged, and he was looking forward to Owner Bu's attack. What they couldn't do, the great demon could. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.